Good evening and welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting for the Board of Education for April 9th, 2018. First of all, for those in the audience, anybody who wants to follow along, we have an agenda outside on the table. Also, anyone who might want to address the board during audience communications, we have blue slips outside, so if you want to fill one of those out. We don't have a big crowd tonight, so we may or may not have that. Again, this is a Committee of the Whole meeting. For those of you at home who want to follow along, you can go to our website, livoniapublicschools.org, highlight over the Board tab, and you will see the agendas and you can follow along. If you've tuned in to hear discussion, you've tuned into the right meeting. This is one where you will hear more in-depth analysis and discussion on items that you may not hear at our voting meeting or what we call our regular meeting. So this is the meeting where we take a deeper look into the items that have been brought before us. Most of the items we've already looked at once at our study session. This is a second go-round, and once we are done with discussing them tonight, some of them will end up on our voting meeting. So you've tuned in the right place if you want to hear discussion. We'll start tonight with audience communications, which is item 1 on the agenda. I do not have any blue slips. I do not see anyone in the audience who is approaching, so it doesn't look like we're going to have any audience communication this evening. So we'll go right into the Committee of the Whole, which is item 2, and it's 2A. The first thing that we're going to discuss tonight, you were given at either the last meeting or at our study session the Code of Ethics. This is a document that we decided a few years ago to sign every year. We hang it in the boardroom, we discuss it, we massage it, things change, sometimes it needs to be altered, and I asked you to go through your Code of Ethics, take a look at it, and I invited your input. So tonight, we're going to take a deeper dive into that. So I'm going to ask everybody to give me their input. You may not want any changes. There may be some that some people would propose, so we'll discuss those. So who wants to start? Vice President Burton.
Thank you. There are just a couple of items that, when I was reading over this again, jumped out at me that they may need a little bit of a tweak or a change. The first one is, let me see here, bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth bullet point that says, I will review and evaluate all policies, bylaws, procedures, and processes, and goes on. I would suggest that we add the word all board policies, because while the policies and bylaws are definitely board policies and bylaws, it also refers to procedures and processes. Sometimes those are board procedures and processes, sometimes those are day-to-day operational. And it is our responsibility to review the board policies, or rather procedures and processes, but not those that are day-to-day operations. So I suggest that we add the word board, so it reads, I will review and evaluate all board policies, bylaws, etc.
Good catch.
Okay. Discussion on that. Mrs. Bradford?
Thank you. Does that mean, would that also, if you put in board policies, does that mean board bylaws, board procedures, and board processes?
I assumed that it was going to, I thought along that line too, and I assumed that it was going to cover all 4, but I'm open to whatever the board would like to do.
Okay.
Is that,
That's how I would read it.
Liz, is that a spot for a semicolon?
No, that's fine.
You could also do evaluate all policies, bylaws, procedures, and processes of the board.
Oh, that might be better.
Okay.
I know we hired her for.
Here we go.
Okay.
Then you could take out that last comma, Tammy.
Yeah.
And that's a capital B?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that, everybody good with that?
That sounds good.
Okay, sounds good.
The other suggestion that I had is just a rewrite of one sentence to make it flow better. I don't believe it changes the intent at all, but it is the last bullet point on the first page. The way it currently reads is, I will respect the consensus and decisions of the board and support their implementation. I would suggest as a cleaner rewrite, I will support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
Comments? Everybody good with that?
Again, if you're reading or thinking, what I'm suggesting is, I will support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
Read it one, I'm sorry. Can you read it just one more
Yeah,
time?
just one.
I will support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
Mrs. Bradford?
Thank you. My only question is, we're going to drop the respect the consensus of the board, or is that just implied?
The way I read it, decisions can either be consensus or can be votes, but decisions, the way I read it, covers either one. Respect is kind of a softer word. I believe our obligation is to support the decisions of the board.
Which would include consensus, that's what I'm asking. Like, in other words, let's say someone doesn't agree with the consensus of the board, but we're respectful, do you think that I support the decisions of the board is enough to encompass?
I believe that it is for myself, but I'm willing to
That's what we're here for.
hear what
Yeah.
other folks think.
What do you think, Mrs. Bradford?
Well, I think they could be two different things, because I will respect the consensus. I might not agree with what everybody's agreeing to, and then we make a decision, and I still have to respect and support that. So in some ways, I think they're two different thoughts.
Are you more comfortable with, I will respect and support the decisions of the board and their implementation? Put both words in there?
Yeah, I do like the word respect in there. I think that's an important word.
And I also think it's important to put support in there.
Yes.
Because it is.
I
important
agree.
That we support the decisions of the board, even though they may not be all of our individual decisions.
Yes, I agree.
Other thoughts? Yes, Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. I would suggest breaking that into two separate bullet points, one about consensus and one about decisions, because Karen's right. They're not the same thing, and we could have one that says, I respect and uphold decisions made, or the consensus of the board, because, as you've stated, when consensus is achieved, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is in full agreement. When we have decisions, it's possible to vote no, and majority rules, and that's really easy to understand and to follow, but to respect consensus is a different thing entirely. So I would put that as two separate items.
So how would you word the first bullet point then?
Let me think on that for a minute.
President Dodson?
Yes.
What about, I will respect the consensus and support the decisions of the board, so that it does both. I will respect the consensus, but also support the decisions, because you can choose one way or the other. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not both always.
You're still
So you
addressing
have
each.
both of the
Yeah.
points, but, I don't know.
Mr. Centers?
Since you're not trying to change any meaning, perhaps we just leave it, is my thought.
I would absolutely like to have the word support in there. I believe that it is very, very important that we support the decisions of the board, even if we disagree with them. And I feel strongly that we have the word support in this statement. How we have it in there and how we'd like to massage it, I'm very flexible on, but I really feel strongly that we state that we will support the decisions of this board.
Does anybody feel that we shouldn't have two bullet points on here?
I don't think you need two personally.
As long as
Lois.
each half is addressed. I think Colleen just said it perfectly.
Yeah.
I will respect the consensus and support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just going to say.
I think that's exactly what it says.
Crystal did, but that's okay.
No, it's
Yeah, but
not.
it's-
Take the word support and move it in front of decisions.
What, say that again, Liz?
I will respect the consensus, comma, and support the decisions of the board and their implementation.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, so we're adding a comma and just moving the word support.
Support the decisions of the board, and then we won't need support again, so, and
Okay.
their implementation.
How does everybody feel about that?
I like it.
Are we good?
It's fine with me. Yep.
So the wording will be, I will respect the consensus, comma, and support the decisions of the board and their implementation. Everybody good with that
Yeah,
language?
I think so. No,
Okay.
no.
I will try and
Wait a minute.
maintain the language so that,
Oh, you got it?
are you,
I'm writing it for
Are you
Mrs.
writing?
Wozniak.
Okay.
You have it? Okay.
okay.
I just want to make sure.
Are you thinking no? You don't?
If you guys are good, I'm good.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
We're good?
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so that bullet point is taken care of.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other one, anything else, Mrs. Burton?
Nope, those were the two that I.
Okay. Other thoughts? Mrs. Bradford, any thoughts?
No, I thought they looked pretty good, all of them, personally, myself.
Mrs. Frank? You're good?
Yep. Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield? Mrs. Jarvis?
Looks good to me.
Mr.
Looks
Centers? Okay. I'm talking about anything else on here.
Right.
Okay. Because I had a couple.
Of course.
Well, all right.
I'm looking at bullet point 7. Yeah, 7,
I will come to the board meetings prepared.
yes.
Okay.
I sort of think that that whole sentence is a little cumbersome, only because bullet point 6 and 7 both use established board operating procedures. So I'm trying to streamline that a little bit. And what I came up with was, I will study the board packet and come to board meetings prepared to discuss and take action on all agenda items. And just totally eliminate the second sentence. Because I think that covers it all. And it brings it, makes it a little tighter, a little cleaner.
Would
Anybody's
you
thoughts?
say it again?
Yes. We're going to take out, my recommendation is to take out the whole second sentence.
Okay.
And rewrite the first one to say, I will study the board packet and come to board meetings prepared to discuss and take action on all agenda items. Any other thoughts on that?
That sounds good.
I'm fine with
Give you
that.
a moment
Yeah, I
to
think that's good.
let that sink in. Mrs. Jarvis is studying. Mrs. Burton.
I'm fine with that because the second half of the second sentence that we're looking at striking is covered under our board operating procedures, which we, in the previous
In
bullet
number
point, we
6,
said
I
we will
agree.
follow this.
Yes,
Right.
so you're,
This was written at a time when we needed a little bit more clarity on that item specifically, but I think that we're good.
I can see the wheels turning in, Mrs. Jarvis.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Absolutely not. I
No, you
want
have
you
the
to
right
think
and the
about it.
duty to express your
That's-
views and
That's
right.
opinions, and to ask questions at the board table.
Exactly.
I think that sounds
I
fine.
had a couple
Yeah.
others that I,
That should be a
Yeah.
lowercase board, right? The board packet is a lowercase b, or is it a case b?
I always put it into that case, but
Okay.
could live with it either way.
yeah, I'm not
It
sure.
could be either way,
Uppercase.
because it's specifically our board packet.
Right.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
She was.
they were
They were
going
trying.
around, yes. You know, it is cumbersome. And I think that I wouldn't want to overlook the importance of feeling empowered to ask for additional information if needed, and that's really not covered elsewhere. So the way you inverted the sentences is fine. I would simply say something along the lines of, feeling that it's okay to ask for additional information if you need it.
Oh, that's a good point.
But, it doesn't have to be following the established board operating procedures, because that's redundant to the one before it.
What about the one after it? What it's saying, of my concerns or need of additional information?
Concerns, yes, but this
No, but I'm
doesn't
saying
really.
add that in there.
We
or
can add,
additional,
maybe we
right.
can move it to that part.
Yeah.
I just want to keep that, that's so valuable to know that it's okay if you need more information,
Right.
or if you don't understand something, as opposed to a concern, which is, that might be addressing the actual topic rather than, if you need more information. It's a little
Notification of my
broader.
concerns or need for additional information prior to the
Right.
board meeting.
So if we strike it from that one bullet point, I'd like to see it at least somewhere else.
Yes, Mrs.
In what
Barton.
format would you like to, would you have a suggested verbiage? One thing that I believe is important is, in our board operating procedures, we're clear that it's fine to ask questions at any time. But none of the 7 of us have the right to request additional documentation, additional reports, additional work done of our superintendent or staff, which is covered under board operating procedures, which is why it says, I will follow established board operating procedures for additional information prior to each meeting. The one thing I don't like about that phrase as it stands right now is it almost implies that you should be asking for additional information before each meeting, and this is how you do it, which is really not the intention. It was, because by the time we get to a voting meeting, we should be getting whatever information we need in our group, in our meetings, our study sessions, or our committee of the whole.
I see what you're saying, but I don't read it that way. It doesn't, to me, sound like it's, if we were to remove it, that we would be limiting how we asked for. If we remove it, there would be nothing in here that suggests that we are able to ask for additional information, that we only have to work with what we have in our packet or what we can glean on our own. Whereas if we have a question, if we don't understand something in that packet, we should feel free to ask for more information, which is not the same thing as requesting work.
Right. Other than it's covered in, I will follow the established board operating procedures, which we have a responsibility to know. I can live with it being there, being in our code of ethics. I just want to make sure that we're careful about how we phrase it.
Right.
So we're not implying we have 7 people who are going to barrage our superintendent with requests for
It sounds like
documentation.
we should preface that request by saying, if I need additional information, then how do we do that?
That would work. I just don't want it to sound as if that door is closed completely, so that we can't get more information, or indeed don't have some
The
means, some
opportunity
procedure.
to do that.
What I was trying to avoid is the redundancy
Sure.
between the previous bullet point that says, I will follow board operating procedures, and having it plugged into that second sentence to again say, I will follow established board procedures. But I understand, I get where you're going, I think you're right, that we need, if I need additional information, I will something, and I'm not sure how to word that. Mrs. Fannfield.
What if in the next bullet down, we say, I will give the superintendent or board president notification of my questions or concerns prior to the board meeting so that
So that they can be
They can
properly
be properly addressed.
so they may be properly addressed.
But I think concerns and questions about more information are 2 different things. I think they are. I think if you look at your packet and you feel that there's something more that you need, it's not necessarily a concern, it's just a need for additional information. That may or may not deal with a concern, you may just want more information. And I'm trying to think of a way I mean, it's pretty easy to say, if I need additional information. Then it's the verbiage after that as to what we do, how do we do that without being redundant with the prior bullet point.
Did you say questions? Is that what you said, Tammy? President Johnson.
Yes.
Sometimes, when I feel like I need additional information, I can contact Andrea or one of the cabinet members, and they will just clarify something for me, and I don't actually need additional information work, I just need the question clarified. So would it be clarification, and then they can either give us information or just clarify it, as opposed to, it's not always, sometimes it's not always that I need more information, it's just that they have it, and I just didn't read it correctly, or didn't, it's not always that we need more work from them. Sometimes it's just a simple clarification. I don't know if that kind of solves where you're going, Liz, or
Yes.
not. Maybe clarification is the word, as
So how
opposed
about,
to...
I will come to board meetings prepared to discuss and take action on all agenda items. I'll study the material in the board packet, seeking clarification if needed prior to each board meeting.
I can live with
I
that.
can live with that.
Yeah, that's
Can you
good.
say it again?
Thank you. First sentence remains, I will study the material in the board packet, seeking clarification prior to, seeking clarification if needed prior to each board meeting.
No, that wasn't what you said.
All right, then you say it.
You're right.
I don't
She's-
think it,
you
I
said
think she
will
started out,
study-
I will come to board meetings prepared to
Yeah, that-
discuss and take action on all
Right,
agenda items.
that sentence stands.
That
And then
Yep.
I will
I will
study,
study the material in the board packet,
comma,
comma,
seeking clarification
if needed.
needed. What's the rest?
We don't-
Prior to each board meeting.
Right, prior to each board meeting.
Oh, all right.
If needed,
Sounds good.
comma, prior to each board meeting.
Sorry, I got a little confused.
Did Mrs. Oakwitz get all that?
I did.
Okay. I
Does
think
that make sense?
Yes.
Which clears up that whole
Yep.
cumbersome
Mhm.
Yep.
phraseology as well.
Absolutely. I like it. That works.
Okay,
Everybody good with that?
yes.
Yep.
Do you have another one?
John?
I do.
Karen lives for the challenge.
Bring it on.
Okay. The third bullet point from the bottom. The second sentence, the more I read it, the more I don't know what it means. I will render all decisions based on the available facts.
How about I will make all decisions based on the available facts?
The problem is, each board member doesn't make the decision. Each board member votes on an item. Maybe, I think that's what my hangup is, because the way it's written, it almost sounds like the board member can make the decision.
Hmm.
I thought something along the lines, I will vote on all matters based on available facts.
Mm-mm. Even prior to that, I don't even think it's the voting, because when you vote, you base it not only on your available facts, but on the discussion that we have as a whole. So it's more than just what you come with, it's what you come with, and what you come with, and what you come with, and you come with. Really, I'm thinking that this is more what you bring to the table rather than what you take away from it.
Seems to me that's implied, though, with all on the available facts.
You could just add available facts, comma, board deliberation. Oh, no. I mean, this is getting it something different.
What is it getting at, to you,
This is-
Billy?
This is getting at what it's kind of ends up with at the very end of this. I believe the gist of what they're saying in this is, I will come and make an impartial decision based on the facts and the deliberation, as opposed to a special interest group that's influencing my decision. That's how I read this.
I agree.
Could you instead say, I will base all decisions on the available facts and my independent judgment?
Oh, that's good.
Yes,
Say that again?
I will base all decisions
yes.
on the available facts and my independent judgment?
So change render to
Yeah.
base.
Yeah.
Base.
I
Render
will
to base and
all
take out
dis-
based.
Yep.
I will base all decisions on the available facts. Yep.
Yes,
That works.
Perfect.
that works for me.
Okay, we good with that?
Yes.
Okay. Second page, fifth bullet point down, we're talking about confidential matters. When it says, "I will respect the confidentiality of information," doesn't really tell me a lot. Perhaps I will keep confidential all information that is privileged.
Oh, mm-hmm,
That works.
yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Has our Scrivener got that?
I do.
Okay. The last one that I have, and this sort of was born out of the President's Workshop, is the very last bullet point under as Board President, where it states, "I will follow parliamentary procedure to the extent that it does not conflict with board policy." State law also takes precedence over Robert's rules. So I think we need to add in, to the extent that it does not conflict with board policy or state law.
I can live with that.
Be good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And I am done with mine.
Wow.
After going through that, any other additional?
Can we just reread the fifth bullet, the previous one that we talked about, I will hold confidential? Can we just reread the ending?
The new language?
Yes, that.
It should be,
I will keep confidential all information that is privileged under applicable law, including closed session discussions.
Okay.
okay. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion then on the Code of Ethics?
One other, back to the same bullet point that Mrs. Monaco was just talking about. Two sentences in a bullet point. One says, "I will hold confidential," the next one says, "I will keep confidential." Shouldn't they be the same for consistency?
No.
I could live with it either way. It could-
I don't have a problem putting keep on both. I don't have a problem with the way it is, but if we want to change it to be consistent with both.
Well, it might be a little awkward reading if they're redundant.
So we say hold confidential matters that will needlessly injure individuals. But then it says, I respect information that is privileged under applicable law. So is anything that we're allowed to keep confidential in the first sentence not covered by applicable law? Does my question make sense?
In other words, you would strike out that whole first sentence?
No.
No, but can we,
Well, I mean, if we were to make it really brief, yes, but I think that we still need to point out that sometimes there are things that needlessly injure people that we just don't need to, point fingers or whatever. But I didn't know if that's still under the applicable law.
Well, I think it's just
No.
saying there's two different classes of information that we'll keep confidential.
Okay.
I'm just wanting to make sure that we're not having someone else read this and think that there's a difference between I will hold confidential all information, blah, 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 and I will keep confidential all information, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they mean the same thing.
Right.
I can live with it either way.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Just trying to make it
Actually-
as clean as possible.
I read it, there's a subtle difference between holding confidential and keeping confidential, and the subtle difference is a matter of origin. The things you hold confidential may not have started out that way, but you are going to keep them confidential. You are going to hold them as confidential because they might be injurious. Something that you keep confidential, started out confidential, and you're going to
Yeah.
maintain that, such as a closed
makes
session
sense.
discussion.
Liz.
Wow.
Oh,
about
Liz,
that?
I'm gonna have to
way
put a
go.
little footnote
Helps
in.
me.
Yeah.
Liz
Yeah.
said.
Makes sense.
Yes, I
That's
like
fine.
it. Okay,
Okay, so
good.
we'll
Yep.
leave hold in the first
Yep.
sentence, okay.
Okay.
That's very good.
That's good, Liz, I like it.
Wow, gold star for the day.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this? All right, I'm trying to remember, we don't need a first reading on that, do we?
We do because it's a
We do,
policy.
because it's policy,
Or
okay.
their bylaw, rather.
So that'll be first reading on
Oh, sorry.
our next
Yep.
regular meeting. All right, thank you, everyone, for that input. That'll take us to item 2B, Parent Advisory Committee Representatives. And we will be hearing from Dr. Muriel.
Hello, good evening, President Johnson,
Good
and board
evening.
members. Sorry about
Good
that.
evening.
I can't believe it has been 3 years since we last recommended our parent representatives for our Livonia Parent Advisory Committee.
Wow.
I know. As you know, per the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education, each school district must appoint at least one parent of a student with a disability as a representative. And this representative serves for the Wayne County PAC as well as our local PAC. The representatives serve 3-year terms and attend the Wayne RESA PAC meetings and provide information to our local PAC meetings for our district's parents of students with disabilities. For example, at the last Wayne RESA PAC meeting, they had information on school finance and Michigan Special Education Mediation Program. At our local PAC meeting coming up on Tuesday, April 24th, at Garfield Community School, our representatives will provide that information to our local families. Eileen Brandt and Kara Clark are our current representatives and have graciously agreed to remain our representatives for the next 3 years. So it is my honor to recommend them to you at the upcoming board meeting on Monday, April 16th.
Awesome.
Questions? Comments? Mrs. Barrett?
Just offer our thanks for serving in this role. It's not easy, but it's important.
Absolutely. They do an amazing job.
And the willingness to continue.
Yes.
Right. Just a quick question.
Mrs. Barrett?
The Livonia PACs, are they open to any parents can come of students with special needs, or is that also a committee, or anyone who with students of special, or anyone can come to those? PAC
Anyone
meetings?
can come to it. We
Okay.
send out information to all of our families with students with disabilities in our district for them to come out. We have a variety of topics. We had My Able come out and present on bank accounts for students with disabilities. We've had our occupational therapists come out and present on sensory information, local camps in the area for students. So there's been a lot of information that we provide to our families, targeted for our families with students with disabilities.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll put this on the regular agenda. Thank you,
Yes,
Dr.
thank
Carey.
you.
Thank you.
And that completes item 2, so we'll move to item 3, Building and Site, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Centers.
Sure. Our first presenter is Mr. Francis. He'll be presenting bids for summer 2018 roofing projects.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody had a nice holiday?
Yeah.
We are starting with, I think we have the packet that Scott gave you, flipped A and B, I'm pretty sure. So, dealer's choice on which one you want to do first. We can do paving, or we can follow your agenda, or we can follow Plant Marcus.
That's just under a paperclip.
Yeah, I would suggest we go ahead and do the roofing first.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good, very good.
Yep, just also wanted to acknowledge, we have Mike Bodie here from RTA. Mike is one of the owners of RTA and the individual we've been working directly with. Mike's been personally involved with these projects and has done a lot of very detailed legwork up on the roofs and provided very quality documents that have been used to bid out the work, and has also been a great asset as the district kind of makes choices as to what kind of roofing system and what our needs and desires are moving forward as we look to implement roofing across the district. So he's in the audience tonight in case there are any specific questions or things that he can help shed some light on.
Thank you.
So as we've discussed in the past at study sessions, you know that we're currently proposing a complete roof job at Holmes Middle School, a partial roofing job at Franklin High School, and a partial at our warehouse building here at Central Office, and a full roof replacement on the transportation building. If you did go to your pack, and just so everybody has a concept, I think you may have seen this in the past, in the back there's some colored maps. I think that's just a nice place to get your bearings, is to be able to look at the first map that we have. It says detail number 21 in the bottom right-hand corner. That's Franklin High School, and you have your key at the right side of this page, showing that, we'll call it violet, I guess. The violet color is the in most distress, is the worst condition of the roofs, and those violet colors on the map, which is predicted to have 0 to 1 year life expectancy, are the areas that we're proposing to do, not any other portion of Franklin. So you can see relative, it's still a pretty good square footage if you hear the numbers, but relative to the building, it's actually not a very large portion of Franklin High School.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Fantz? Looking at this, I'm assuming the blue in the left lower portion, that, I'm looking at the pack.
That's the PAC.
Okay, so I can orient myself. Okay. thank you.
Yeah, you're going in, so that's the bus loop to the right,
Oh, okay.
if you can imagine the bus loop in there.
Okay.
Okay, and then-
See,
The LMC, that's the front of the LMC, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the two areas at the north end of the classroom wing.
Okay,
so just
in
the
back.
purple areas.
Yes.
Just the purple,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, and then if you flip the page, that is Holmes Middle School. So the entire building, you can see it is, as an overall, and we talked about this quite some time ago, RTA did a nice job of trying to give us the condition numbers, the RCI, the relative condition, and blending those numbers based upon how much square footage might be in good shape versus how much square foot. Homes came out to be overall in most need of a full repair, and you can see why when you see the color
this is
map, and a little bit of a heat map there.
Heat loss.
And any questions on the homes? It's the full roof, tear off. We'll be getting it more into, I just wanted you to orient yourself with the building and what we're doing with
Oh,
it.
excellent.
The next page is the transportation building here at the central office complex. You can see that the full color of it is red, both areas A and B, and that'll be a full mark there, or a full change. And the last page is only area B, which is the smaller section, which again is that violet purple color that we're proposing to change because area A has been recently done. It's in very good shape. So any questions on the maps?
Thank you, thank you for the map.
Sure, just so you can kind of get a sense of how much, et cetera, is occurring. Okay?
Hey, Phil.
Yes, sir.
On the warehouse, the very last one.
Yes.
So what happened with area A/B?
I don't know for
Okay.
sure. Mike, do you happen to know
The-
why only one part was not done?
They had just put one layer of insulation on there. It was expanded polystyrene. It doesn't meet the fire codes. They should never put that directly over steel deck.
Okay.
And consequently, the fasteners are popping up through the roof membrane.
That's not
So
good.
the rest of it's okay?
The rest of it, we can live with for a few years.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's why we brought it.
Mrs. Sharp.
Thank you. Excuse me. On the warehouse picture, I'm geographically challenged. Which way's up? Which way's, what is the orientation on this?
Is it laying north right now? I think it is laying compass rose north.
Okay, thank you. So this is the area, the purple area then is where the print house is.
And it would be in the back if my rose is accurate, but I think Scott's gonna try and pick it out.
Just gonna try and get the area.
So that would actually be, no, that's west.
Right, it's on the west side, isn't it, though, the print shop?
The print shop is on the west side.
So
and the-
that would
and the-
be-
Would be the back, so to speak. So it would be north southwest. It would, if we're correct at my compass rose, then yes, it would be the western portion, because I said north is up.
Yes.
So we're gonna see if we can get it
That's correct.
It is,
It's
yeah,
the
okay.
west side.
Okay.
It's the west
Okay.
side.
It is, it's
So
that
that's by
print
the
area
print
where the
area.
food services as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Well, we want to be able to get through the cost summaries and the bid tabs with you because of we actually put these together in 3 different packs. So we had homes, we had the central office complex because it's the same area, and then we had the Franklin. So I think I'm going to let Scott walk you through the bid results of the 3 different items. So that could have been theoretically one company having enough manpower, et cetera, to do them all, up to 3 different companies ending up with the low bid for 3 different roofs. So I think we'll just kind of go through it from there and then be able to answer your questions as they come up. Clearly, Holmes is the lion's share of this job because it's the full tear off.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to take just a step back. This is kind of the first year, this is the first year we've done this, and so Livonia Schools had a chance to kind of start fresh and say, well, what do we want? What kind of roof do we want to install? What will it look like? What material will it be made of? What color will it be? So prior to putting all this out for bid, we had numerous meetings with RTA, Mr. Francis, Harry Lau, Wayne Roberts, and we talked at length about all the different choices and the pros and cons of each, the cost of each. We really relied upon Mike's experience as well in the area and going through that and making those selections. So what we came up with was a very nice, an EPDM roof, which is basically a black rubber roof that you see on most buildings, to be honest with you. It's a thicker membrane, not the thickest by any means, it became cost prohibitive, but a very nice thickness that was kind of a trade-off between cost and durability. It's reinforced, which gives it additional strength. It's black, which will help us. In the south, you might elect to choose a lighter color because there you're trying to defer heat. We're here in Michigan most of our school days. Choosing a darker color is actually going to help save energy in some respects because we're going to try to absorb that heat. And school's in session on more cold days than the warmer days in the summer. So those were all things that played into that discussion. We also looked at warranties. You can get a 15-year warranty, but for a modest price increase, and it's very minimal. The industry standard seems to be moving towards a 20-year warranty. So all the new roofs will have a 20-year warranty from the manufacturers, something that, again, should help us long-term in the district. And again, we didn't even bother to bid out the 15-year. We wanted the longer life, and again, just based on prior experience, that cost trade-off was not was really insignificant in terms of the total project. So that's kind of how we arrived at what we were actually bidding out. So I wanted to let the board know and the community know that there was a lot of discussion about where we were headed and what direction we wanted to go before we started bidding out these first ones. As Mr. Francis stated, we thought, again, on these projects, how do we want to break these down so that it's advantageous to bidders, also into pieces that people can handle. We didn't want to just put it all in one. It's a lot of work, and truthfully, we're not getting as early of a jump on bidding this out as we would have liked. We hope in the future to kind of get on the front side of that now that we've kind of started the process. So we did. We broke it into 3 areas, homes being one bid, the portions at Franklin High School being a second bid, and then just because of the scope and the location, we combined the transportation and the warehouse buildings into another. And from a schedule standpoint, that actually helps us. Those are roofs that we can probably start a little bit earlier. The school does not need to be dismissed necessarily to start the work in those areas. So those we can hope to start maybe late May or before even school gets out. The other areas will wait till school dismisses, and those will be done during the summer months, summer weeks, I should say. So we put this out on the streets in early March 9th. We publicly advertised it. We reached out to numerous bidders that RTA has had success with in the past. They've done quality work, invited them to attend our walkthrough. We reached out to the Sheet Metal and Roofing Contractors Association. They help promote awareness of our projects, again, with the idea of trying to promote interested parties that could perform the work successfully. On March 27th, we did take bids. We got 6 bid proposals from 3 contractors. Now, each of those 3 contractors didn't necessarily bid on 3 projects. It was up to their discretion to gauge their manpower and their prior commitments in terms of doing that. We took 3 bids at the roofing at the warehouse and transportation building. We received 2 proposals at Franklin High School, and then unfortunately we only received a single proposal at Holmes Middle School. That was a little bit disappointing to us. We had hoped for more. We had a good turnout at our walkthrough of 5 bidders. Through our conversations leading up to that, we expected more as well. Diving into that some after the bid and trying to understand why that happened, it was a lot of what we had feared, is that people's schedules are just full for the most part. And if they're not full, they didn't have the capacity to take on a project as large as Holmes. Holmes is going to be something that we'll want to get started right away, and it will probably finish right at the very end. So that would tie up a company's resources pretty much the whole summer, whereas the transportation buildings, it's a couple of weeks worth of work in good weather. They can move on and take on other responsibilities.
I do want to jump in
Yeah.
and say, I appreciate how Scott is describing it, but I know that RTA and Plant Moran, and even our people who have relationships with roofing companies, in the area, we're all doing a lot of due diligence. At the study session, someone had asked, hey, how's the coverage? And I said, I don't know, because we haven't opened the bids yet, but boy, I know we've been beating the bushes. So it really was, there was a lot of work put in to drum up the interest in it. And as Scott mentioned, we did have 5 firms show up for the walkthrough. For whatever reason, some of them decided not to bid any of the projects after the walkthrough. So one of the questions that was posed was, especially to one of the roofing companies who's has done quite a bit of work in the district and are close by, and they simply said, boy, by late fall, we're booked for the summer. But we're going to talk through the Holmes project and why we firmly believe that it is the right thing to do, it is a fair number, and the right thing to do now as opposed to putting off for another year, and why that firm has the ability to do it versus some other smaller firms who are already booked up. So we'll walk through that.
I guess just a couple other things that we did during the bid. We bid a couple alternates. One was an area at Churchill High School, which was kind of around call it the back of house area, back behind the stage. That was an area that had shown in our RTA's RCI index a little bit lower. We thought, well, since we're doing work in that area now, let's take some pricing on it and just see where the numbers were. Based on the bid results and looking at it a little bit further, we don't recommend recommend holding off on that work right now. We think we can package it with some larger work at Churchill when the time's right. Those areas really aren't critical, that they don't fall into the same categories that some of these other ones do. So we're recommending holding off on that. The other alternate that we did, I think we've talked in the past about the fascia panel replacements, and Mr. Francis has some pictures too to help clarify exactly what it is that we're replacing there. But we looked at a couple different systems. Again, being in the first year we did it, we're doing this, and we probably will have this come up at other schools as we kind of work our way. They're certainly not at every school, but schools such as Kennedy, Hoover, they have these metal panels, fascia panels on the vertical side, and replacing them in kind with new panels while we're doing the re-roofing projects really makes some sense in terms of accessibility. And these are old panels that are, in some cases, original to the building and would make sense to complete. But we looked at 2 different systems, hoping to understand which one would be more cost-effective and yet provide the insulating value and the right product to put in place. So that the base system was really a built-up system. It was an insulation system that goes on. I guess at this point, maybe we just throw around some pictures to make sure
We're talking homes
about the
right now only, okay? The only building that had that was homes. And just so you can see, it's about a 2.5 to 3 foot section, depending on the shot. It's really is a light
Do you
tan.
want to hold up one so everybody can see,
Yeah.
and then you can pass it
It
around?
really is just it's kind of, it comes out peachy in some of the shots, but it's just that light colored
Peachy,
tan
okay.
that's metal, about 2.5 to 3 feet. And then that white band is simply the metal that copes over the top. It is not that corrugated green at the top of
As I
homes
thought,
that
okay.
was discussed at one point.
That I
I thought
thought
that
looked
was the
pretty
confusion,
good.
yes. So that's going to remain. So it's really
Okay.
just this, and it'll just be a light neutral color, maybe an off-white or something like that gets chosen. So, but as you flip through, you can, I really was trying to take the shots of that fascia panel so you can understand what it is when you look at it from afar and from near that we're going to be replacing. And it certainly is an item that we know can use the change out. There's certainly areas with very low R factor. There are areas that, if you pull back the metal, you can see through. You can get daylight. So they're definitely in need of repair. And as Scott was discussing, we have other buildings that have those fascia panels, and this was an interesting time to try a couple different systems to see how they cost out, what the R factors will be, and what direction we may end up going in the future, so.
No question somebody's going to be looking to you as a photographer.
My phone did all right.
Did you use your phone?
That was my phone, yeah.
They are pretty good.
So when you're talking about being able to pull back and see daylight, are we going to be then insulating underneath these
Yeah,
fascia
I think
panels?
Scott's going to describe the panels as we get there, and it will absolutely tighten them up. In fact, and I'm stealing a little bit of thunder here, the style that we're going to recommend actually even gives us a higher R factor than the built-up style that we had originally talked about. So it's going to be a good product, a strong product. It's going to be something that we believe is, I'm equating it a little bit to like the pad when we talked about the athletic field pads. I'm saying we're actually going to get a cost savings out of an equal or potentially better product.
Yeah, the two different panels, one is more of a built-up system, so you put on the insulation, kind of like you're building a house, you put up the insulation, then you put the panel, you would see the aesthetic piece over the top of it. And we originally had thought that might be a good system would be more cost-effective. The other system was more of a composite panel, where it's a sandwich panel, so it's two pieces of metal with insulation in there, and it's really a one-piece unit. And that's really a premium product, and we expected to see that would be more expensive. The fact that it was less expensive, when we get into the details, I think is really a testament to how there's a lot more labor associated with the built-up system, and I think that's a testament to how much work is out there, that you can maybe get a system that installs, the material itself is more expensive, but it takes less time to install. I think that's why maybe we saw cost savings in this instance for this work. So those were the two alternates that we did bid, and they were, one was for homes and then the other was for Churchill.
The Churchill was that piece of the roof that we're not recommending. The fascia panel is one that we will recommend.
Question. The white that's at the top of the fascia, is that considered part of the fascia? Is that going to be replaced as well?
It will. That's actually what they call the coping. So generally with a roof replacement, I guess the other thing I should mention is that we're drastically increasing the R value, the insulating, the thermal properties of the roof in this. We're taking them up to, it's an average system because you don't get this exact thickness throughout, but it's roughly an average of an R30, which is the new energy code. In order to do that, we're actually building up the parapet or the edge around there with some wood nailers to account for that increased, because we're actually adding more insulation now. So as part of that coping piece comes off as well. So now that new one will go over the top of the fascia panel. And that's again why it's advantageous to do it now. We have that all exposed. And as we learned during the renovation of homes, in certain cases the caulk had failed. They were starting to detach a little bit throughout in various locations that we reattached during the renovation. these are really the exterior skin for that top 2.5 feet. If you were to magically pull that panel off, and you were 8, 9 feet tall, you'd see right into the building. So this new panel will be watertight. It will be an R25 insulating value. So again, we're tightening up the envelope. We're increasing the efficiency of the building itself. I
Right,
think
so
it's
yeah, you'll have
nice system.
a tighter, preventing air, and the R value of the roof and the R value of the fascia panel will both be increased from what they are now. And then, as he mentioned before, with a black roof, it'll absorb some more of that sunlight and more of the heat in the winter to try to help. And part of it, why it's going to be not part of it, but the reason we have an average is because it is sloped. Because if you think about it, it's not a completely flat roof. It's got a drain. So it's got, larger roofs have different sections of drain. So it comes from a little bit higher to a little bit lower. So the R value at the drain is much lower, but the heat from the building is going to come up and melt some of that around there. And then the rest of it, as it pulls back towards the edges, is going to be a higher R value. So that's in a nutshell how homes would get, would be done. So the changes are somewhat, nobody really sees it, but they're somewhat dramatic in the fact that we currently have a white roof. The fascia panels are built up. They're not really well insulated in many of the areas, whereas what we're going to be doing is really building up that roof, having a black roof, having a higher R value, which will help button up some of the, the heat. And then the fascia panels will be a solid single sandwich piece and also have a higher R value.
Mrs. Burke.
With the R value being so much higher, makes me just wonder, are there any rebates that are available from our utility companies? I know sometimes there are if we're doing real significant energy-saving projects.
There are some, and there were some last year. There are things we're still looking at with RTA. So yes, we will definitely look into any and all rebates associated with that.
Okay.
See what's involved with those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
So is this something that's going to become, all the roofing and the fascia stuff, part of our book of standards then? Is that being included?
You mean for a future project, is this going to be the standard of?
Yeah.
I think anything would go from here. So very similarly to what happened with bond work and buildings, as we move forward, not all the buildings need fascia panels, so that wouldn't be an item. But as far as how we're doing the roof, the type of membrane, it's going to be the baseline for what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Okay.
Now, if 7 years from now we're doing a roof and something changes, then we'll of course want to move with any type of codes, et cetera, that are occurring.
Certainly. My second is just sort of an observation. So Holmes this last summer was under construction. Everybody saw it under construction. We had the sign out that it was bond work, all that kind of stuff. I'm a little concerned that the public's going to drive by and wonder why they didn't do a good job on the building last year, and now they have to redo it already. So I'd like to see maybe some signage out front about what is actually happening on the building. Just Holmes is right there on Newburgh Road.
That's a good point.
And if it's under construction all summer long, I think that we need some, very clear, publicity or whatever out in front of the school so that, people who drive by aren't assuming that it was, that we're redoing whatever we did last year.
And you shouldn't see to our point of that, and that makes sense. But there won't be heavy equipment. You're not going to see the cranes and the asphalt eaters and all the things that have been there the last couple of years. At some points, you may not even know something is going on if they're on the back of the roof and whatnot. But to your point, seeing more construction, it's not that anything was done wrong. We didn't do the roof during the bond. The bond didn't hold the roof, and
but that's what I'm saying is that we need to make sure that however that is that people aren't driving by making that assumption that something went wrong or we have to redo something, that this is a different project.
Correct. It's probably a good reminder to the community that's listening in that really the roofs were not part of the bond work. Any roof work that we did do was kind of collateral to any work that was done with new rooftop units or some improvement that was part of the bond scope. So we're really just starting into the sinking fund portion of that right now, so.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. Maybe we could have a sign that says you're sinking fund dollars at work. People don't always understand what a sinking fund is or what it does, and that it's different from the bond.
Yeah.
Mrs. Frank.
I also just wanted to remind the board that Holmes was done 2 years ago, correct?
Oh,
So it
sorry.
wasn't just done last summer, and then last summer, though,
Paving.
we did the paving. So it also might be that people say, wow, look how they're really investing in the school, because the major renovation was done 2 years ago, last year was paving, and then this year is roof. So I think that we can also, it is, I think, a testament of the
PR.
board's dedication to prioritize the schools and the safety and the efficiency of the schools, that we are not just stopping with the bond dollars, but we're continuing on. So I'm not sure what that is. I don't know what that means, but I do think that it's not, it's not like we're going back and doing the same thing. I think that it's good to see that we've done things over the years as opposed to just coming back to the same school that year.
We'll
Good
hire
points.
one of those guys that holds the
Sandwich
sign
board?
up there.
All right, didn't know if there's any other
I
questions.
guess just continuing on with the recommendation, so after taking the bids, sitting down, reviewing them, meeting with the contractors, we're looking to recommend two firms tonight. A single firm for Holmes Middle School, that's Lutz Roofing. Lutz is a larger roofing contractor in the area. We have worked with them, RTA has worked with them both successfully recently.
They're actually scheduled to do some work at Webster through the bond this summer.
Yep. So we feel comfortable with them. That's probably one of the reasons they were able to take on a project like this, because of their size. The next firm, J.D. Candler, who is out of Livonia and has done numerous projects here under the bond as well. That was one of the firms Mr. Francis mentioned that just didn't have the manpower to be able to take on this. The other part, Lutz has a sheet metal division too, which really plays well into the fascia panel work. So we think that actually there's some efficiencies from them, and those two firms really need to work together. As you tear it off, you need to put it back on, and that kind of needs to happen with the roof itself. So having those two things in common will allow them to probably move through the project a little more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, they came to the post bid together. I think the two companies are related. I mean, literally, like, family has the two, whereas I think a traditional roofing company would be getting a subcontractor to be doing the fascia panels. It would have to coordinate with them. This is a bit of an efficiency, seeing how they sort of come as a package.
Yep. So that, again, just going through that, again, with it being the single bidder, we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence. As you'll see from the third page where we have the budget summary, we were a little bit over budget, but I think certainly well within, I don't remember the exact percent, but I think we were 7-8% over on that, and a little bit under at the Franklin High School, and pretty much on budget at the transportation warehouse building. But again, we felt comfortable with the firm, felt comfortable with where we're at, their abilities to complete the work, and we continue to see chains, emails, notifications about pricing increases for materials as it pertains to roofing. We're constantly getting calls from them, hey, what do you know, we need to lock in soon. So there is still continued pressure in the marketplace right now. There are escalation on materials. They've guaranteed us that, their bid price is they will hold their bid price, even though they've received notifications since that time of price increases. So we think we have a good firm on board. They're qualified to do the work. Their numbers within reason to the budget, and that's why we're recommending them here tonight.
Just to take the opposite tack, and so you know, as a team, we also sat back and said, what do? We have one bidder. Not only do we look for the reasons why they can do it and why they should be doing it now, But we also took the opposite tact of, what if we waited? What if we bid this out again later? And the advice that we got at that time, from Mike at the RTA, said, your materials are just gonna go up. Any savings you get from potentially having somebody, else be able to bid the project are gonna be gobbled up in the price increase. And literally, within a week, we started getting the notifications from Lutz, and they were showing us the letters from their suppliers saying, prices are going up on these supplies right now. And we're talking about prices going up potentially within the time that this job that we're recommending occurs, let alone holding off and doing, rebidding it again. So I think it is prudent to say, we've got a number that was right around in the wheelhouse of what we expected it to be. We've got our materials locked in. We've got our folks locked in. To move forward now would be our recommendation, as opposed to putting this back on the street and seeing what happens in the next school year, so.
The second recommended contractor is J.D. Candler. They're out of Livonia, Michigan, and we're recommending them for work at Franklin High School, as well as the transportation and warehouse buildings. We didn't look at it as a combined bid for those two. They just simply were the low bidder on both of those projects respectively. We just rolled it into a single recommendation for them. So looking at the budget summary, or our cost summary, the total recommendation tonight would be $2,907,252. What that is, that consists of $2,691,900 of hard construction dollars, a construction contingency of 8%. Again, we ramped that down a little bit based on the large dollar value of this contract, as well as historical. The other part is, a lot of these roofs are complete tear-off, so had we thought that there might be wet insulation or such up there, we might have kept it at a higher percent. Since we're taking all that insulation off, there'll still be some things that we do encounter. There could be some bad decking. There could be some things that do require replacement, but we didn't go in with a higher contingency just due to the fact of what we were doing. So we took all that into consideration. So at 8%, that takes us to the $2,907,252. If you continue to turning, you'll see the recommendation letter from Roofing Technology Associates. Again, the recommendation for homes includes the alternate number 2, which was the composite or the sandwich paneled fascia replacement, and that was a savings of approximately $50,000 over the other system. So $250,000 versus $300,000 roughly in terms of those two.
Again, and according to Lutz, that's because of the labor. It's much more labor intensive to build it up.
And probably the last page before you get to the maps, you'll see the actual bid tabulation there. All firms recommended tonight are the low responsible bidder for the work.
Any comments or questions? Mrs. Alquist.
So, thanks for the background on that, and we wanted to make sure to take some time with you based on the bid coverage. And one of the things that we've already discussed is, because we do have our long-term facility plan, and we do have the roofing study that's been completed by RTA, and we have already reviewed with the board our plan for the next 2 to 3 years with regard to potential sinking fund projects. Our plan would be to bring this back to the board in the fall for the next set of projects for next summer. So at this, we brought that as soon as we had the opportunity to have all of these pieces together based on our long-term plan for the sinking fund. But timing-wise, we should be in much better position next year. You know where we're headed. We've talked about tackling a couple of these larger roofing projects every year to continue to move down that cycle of need that we see that exists. And again, we're doing that within our sinking fund budget because as we've talked about, this was not part of the projects ever planned as part of the bond. So to be sure for any community members that are listening, the roofing projects were not part of the scope of the $195 million bond. It was always intended that those would be taken care of via our sinking fund. And so we'll be bringing forward, you'll see those projects being recommended to you much earlier next year.
Yeah, and to that point, if you recall, going back earlier in this school year, we were just getting RTA, together. We were having meetings with RTA. They were getting on the roofs. They were doing the analysis. They were putting the reports together. Now we want to turn them loose and start designing the next one and be ready to go in the fall. We want to be part of those, one of those schools that has it out, and we're gobbling up somebody's schedule already in late fall. So that's our plan.
So maybe sometime this summer, we would present to you, maybe as a proposed amendment to RTA's contract, we'd have them get up on the next school. We'll figure out exactly what school that is and get that in front of you guys, and so we can get in front of it and prepare to bid this thing out kind of late this year. Late this calendar year. That should be a much more opportunistic time.
All right.
Thank you.
Are we moving on to?
Moving on to
letter B?
pavement.
Okay, and we're
Is this
voting, we're going to vote on
Mike, thank you
this.
for being here tonight.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Letter B is bids for Phase 3 paving projects.
Right now, what I'm handing you is not on the docket tonight. It's going back in time a little bit. I should have brought these. This is Buchanan, what you're looking at. Just wanted to make sure you understood where the parking lot was going to be at Buchanan. This is something the board has already reviewed and voted on and approved. But just to clarify, as you pull in, you can see the driveway coming from the left. You're coming in, and on the left side or north side, that's gray. That's a new parking lot. That's where the old playground and structures were. That's where the parking area that you approved.
It's not
That's
gray.
exactly that's
It's
gray.
not really gray.
It's
Oh,
not
you know
gray
what?
on ours.
I'm
but
looking. I
that's
probably
okay.
have the original on top, but
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this area, this whole
correct. That
area is
rectangle.
new?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That rectangle up here.
Okay.
On the north side of the driveway.
Oh,
The
got it,
squiggly
okay,
area.
yep.
Is that a shrubbery around it?
That's the squiggly area showing
Looks like
up.
a
So
shrubbery.
some questions.
No,
And it goes from total parking spaces of 99 up to 149.
this
So
is
it's a gain of 50 lots.
is it Garfield?
You guys.
Wait, what school is this?
This is Buchanan. You've already
Buchanan.
approved this. I just
Okay,
wanted to
okay.
clarify for you.
Right, sorry.
This is Buchanan. This was
Ah.
already approved by the board, but we
Alright.
thought you may or may not actually.
Oh, the
No,
long
no,
road.
no.
This is the long
This
road.
was the
I got it.
basketball court.
Yes.
Yes.
That's Hubbard to your left.
Yes,
Gotcha.
Yes,
Right, right.
yes,
Okay, I'm on it
we're
now.
getting it.
I feel like I need
Come
a
on.
pointer.
The light went on. The bulb.
You let me know when you want me to go on to the thing we're actually going to be voting on. Hopefully.
This is the
Okay.
new.
Okay, thanks.
We're going to keep this.
But really, Phil, those are the only new parking spots. No, these two are new too.
So in the
These down here.
driveway, as you head west,
There-
east in the driveway.
Right.
On the right-hand side, you see approximately 10
This is new?
parallel
There's some,
spaces.
here, take one and
Yeah,
pass it down.
okay.
There's some
Okay,
parallel
yes.
spots. There's about 10 of them.
Oh, good catch.
So they can stay on that side. They were parking like that anyway, and it puts them on that side of the, parents can be on that side of the sidewalk. But the majority
Oh, okay.
is
Gravel.
to
Phil,
the-
could they not go straight in as opposed to parallel? Because you could get more cars if they went straight.
We don't want them straight in because then you have children coming out of sides and whatnot. We want them to come off that passenger side onto a sidewalk.
Okay.
And really, according to the principal, that's not that big of a deal. If it was an evening event, like an open house, he said people will start pulling in straight.
Yeah.
Because you can get more of them in.
Right.
It's really getting many of the staff cars out of the main lot and into that extra lot is what's gonna open it up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So that was an added extra.
Yeah, I didn't mean to throw a curve into.
One more thing, Phil, so are you saying the staff is gonna park out here?
That's gonna be the
Yes.
request, yes.
Okay.
The request.
Here, you have to come.
You know how the staff
All
is.
the way
The
around.
staff
It's
parks
really
out
not
here
that
to
far.
leave.
I know.
Across the thing. All right,
Just
you have the grant coming around now.
grant.
Grant.
So we just wanted to show you Buchanan because we talked about it verbally,
Yes.
and I thought it might be helpful if you saw
It is
an
very.
That's helpful.
outline
Thank you.
of where, when you're coming in, where we'll be adding those spots. And
Perfect.
that we were able to recapture with the new playground equipment going to the back of the school and their
Oh.
entire playground moving to the back.
Oh, nice.
It freed up that
Oh,
whole
so
section
no
in the
kids will be out front.
Right,
So they
that
won't
was-
be
All
crossing the
there.
lot any longer. They won't be utilizing
Oh,
that front
that's
area
wonderful.
as a playground. And so we were able to recapture that area without having to create a new
Perfect.
concrete.
Perfect. Oh, that's
Which
nice.
is why we didn't need to
Right.
mess with
Right.
the count.
It's it works out quite well. All right, again, didn't mean to
Oh, it was good, it was really good.
throw us off there. I just
Throw us a monkey
you know.
wrench.
Now, what you have in front of you is we're bringing this evening the information and bid results on the paving project. We're calling it Phase 3 for the summer of 19. That's Grant and the Frost entryway, the driveway tying in on Stark. I mentioned those in the past. The Stark road is being done by the city of Livonia this summer. With a discussion with the city of Livonia, they had mentioned that this was occurring. They had suggested that we work on that north driveway. And for us, we felt it was a win-win, because not only could we tie that in, but we wanted to lower the slope, the elevation of it, because if you've ever used it, it rises very quickly. So we'll be dropping that down and tying it into what the city's doing on Stark there. It's more of a, ours is getting done, after theirs is getting done, it's tied in together at the same time. That's really a smaller project and a bit of an add-on that we didn't really know as much about before, but we're taking the opportunity and the timing to use it. Grant was something that we've been discussing, and much like Buchanan and Randolph with their parking lots, trying to get some extra parking on them. If I can just walk you through this map before we start talking about bid numbers, et cetera, I think Grant is unique in that we don't have a before and after. We've got sort of a before, what really has been happening, and an after that I want to walk you through with regard to parking spots. So if you're looking at the map I gave you of the layout of their parking lot, you can see the drive coming in. First things first, immediately to the right, we found, what we did was we went through several ideas. How can we help alleviate Grant? And we took it's at one point it was getting the buses out of there by driving them, have a large driveway going all the way to West Chicago and seeing if that could help alleviate things. And it turns out we asked NTH to go take a look at the traffic. They sent one of their professionals in, and they talked to the building principal, and after watching an AM and a PM and talking to the principal, they said, you don't need to get your buses out of here, you need to get people in parking spots. That's what's gonna help alleviate some of this. So that's where we started discussing then, how can we add additional spaces? Now, when you first come in to the right, they also noticed that to the right of that driveway in, after school, people would duck their cars in there and sit. It was grass at one time, it's not anymore. It's more like ruts and dirt. So we want to do, part of this plan calls for, and this is a small part of the plan, but it does call for having this area have some plantings and maybe even a fence to avoid vehicles pushing over onto it and sitting there waiting for their children to come out, because it's not a parking spot. And then what it does is their car sticks out into the driveway entry point in, and then they get to back up and get around them. It became a log jam just from a couple of cars
This is the section
stopping there.
Yeah, this is
Which
what
I
I
just highlighted.
Okay?
Okay, by the entrance.
But right at the entrance, they'd come in the
Right at the
entrance and
beginning.
pull off to the right, and they'd stick out a little bit and potentially slow things down. So that's one small piece that we found. We're gonna try to get some efficiency there. Now, coming into the main parking lot area, the very large elongated oval is what we have now. Sparing you some of all of the little intricacies of some of the paint changes, et cetera, the reality is, the way it looks now, the middle has the parking, and to the west, where you now see parking on this, there is not legal parking. So the before, if you were talking about how many parking spots are there, is I want to say 74, 73 or 74? I think it's like
70.
yeah, it's a very small number versus where we're going to end up. But more people were parking because they would just pull in. They said, I know it's not a spot, but I'm just going to drive over to that area and sit there. So what we've done in this plan is while it had originally, or does currently have 70s, low 70s, something like that, actually striped parking spots, it could accompany, or it could accommodate 100 to 104 cars by way of the illegally parking without any stripes. Okay? What we're going to accomplish by actually putting the stripes in and building in the northeast corner up there, we're going to repurpose some that's where the dumpster is now. We're going to have that moved, and we're going to repurpose that area and repave it as more parking. So between the current spots and the proposed spots, we're going to go from 70 to 140, or I think it's 74 to 140. But in practicality, in truly what's going on, about 100 people are parking now, but we're going to increase that to 140, and they'll all be legally striped spots, plus have an additional section where the principal has already spoken to some of the staff and said, please take that area over there for your cars to get some of the staff cars out of the main lot. So at this point, we've also cut off in the middle, if you can, right around here, there used to be a turnaround, there currently is a turnaround. That will be a thing of the past. The principal said it was actually just causing problems, and as did NTH said, they see people looping here and then looping here. If you think about Stevenson, how we don't want them to loop at the early one, we have them go all the way around in the morning. Same idea. We're just going to paint spots into there, so we gain spots on that. So you just have to come all the way in and around.
Can I interrupt for
Yeah.
1 second? So are the parents dropping off going to come by the buses and all the way around? They're just going to write the buses around?
This is so wide, it could be 2 lanes, but it's not. It's
Okay.
one way in and one way down. So this, you can see to the right on the curb, this will all be, it's almost like a little candy cane, buses only. Okay?
But before that is student drop-off. Do you see where it says
Right,
student
but
Yes.
then they're
But
going to
then
pull
the cars
out.
will
Yes.
pull around and go around the
Yes.
buses.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Now
It's
remember,
not
kids,
unlike they do now.
no,
Okay.
that's what they do now. And don't forget, buses, kids are getting in on the curb.
Right.
Yeah,
Not,
so,
they're not coming out the other side of the bus. They're curbside, pick up and drop off. And also remember, in the mornings, it's very different than the afternoon. In the afternoon, all the buses are there stacked waiting for kids, and they all roll out pretty much the same time. In the morning, the principal says, I get one bus. And then another bus comes. Once in a while, 2 will happen to roll in at the same time. You're not talking about stacked buses in the morning.
Right.
You're only talking about it in the afternoon. So that's the general look of this. And we're going from 70 legal spots, truly about 100 people actually parking, to 140 in this proposal.
Very nice.
So I guess if there's not any questions, if there are, we'll take those now, and then we'll go into, the bid items for you.
Mrs. Frank?
Sorry. So I spent a lot of time in pickup lines. So this is my, I have a master's in parking lots, in school parking lots. So my one question, at Webster, they do a phenomenal job that you have got to go across on a crosswalk. Because you're saying you want your parents to park in spots as opposed to, that would be the goal, is that they're parking and walking their children
It's
across?
not what we want, it's what they do.
Okay. But you only have one crosswalk down here at the very end? So there are going to be kids that are parking at this north side, correct? And they're supposed to walk all the way across the parking lot to get to the building. You want them to,
There's a sidewalk.
but you want.
no, but
they
in the
have to
center,
cross.
she's talking in the
They
center.
have to cross there needs to be a crosswalk up there.
So, according to the
Right.
principal, the reason we need more spots is because parents who drop off, they have this part here, they get out and they keep going. They only park if they want to get out and walk their child across as well.
Right.
So she did not have a need, I can ask her again about it, but she in fact took away one of her crosswalks because she found it to be more confusing because there's now a couple of crosswalks, and she preferred to have, we gained, I think, 5 or 6 spots by removing the secondary, more northern crosswalk. So I can ask her again, but that was actually the building said, please remove the crosswalk.
I just think you will have kids, in my opinion, you'll have kids darting in between the buses
Yeah,
with
like
a
right
parent. I
here.
mean, it's not just kids, it's parents too. They'll be darting in between the buses if they have to walk all the way down here to cross. Maybe Grant is different than any of the other schools that I've dropped off, but if you, as a parent, and my kid's late, and the only spot is this top northern spot, I want to dart across here and where the buses are, and the buses, then it's frustrating because they're trying to get out to get to their next stop, and they're trying to move.
So I'm
And to
just
have
thinking,
parents crossing in between the buses, I think is hard.
in the
But if
morning,
it's fine.
but again, in the morning, they're not all buses stacked there. There's one bus and they drive away.
Right,
So
okay, but
if
then the
you're-
parents are picking up the kids and then walking through these buses.
Mhm.
I don't know Grant, I've never been in the Grant, so maybe it's different than the other schools that I've been, but I just think, and maybe she can do it by, norms of the school, and this is how we do it, and maybe it's different than any of the schools that I've been, but I just think it's such a problem whenever you're in the parking lot and kids are darting across the street. You know to stop at a crosswalk, when the kids are darting across the parking lot all the way through there. I do know a lot of parents like to park and walk, and especially this has a kindergarten in it, so kids they're gonna want to walk their kids across. And I just think, if there's not designated spots, north and south, for kids to walk across, that you're gonna have a lot of darting. You're gonna have darting anyway. I mean, it is a reality. But that's just my 2 cents as my master's in parking.
Absolutely, and then I will say that
it might be
neither
different.
Moran nor LP, nor I, nor even NTH was going with the crosswalk. We left that to, because we don't do the morning and afternoon bus duty, we asked the building, and we did rely on the building's input as to the paint, and this is how they wanted it painted.
Okay.
So we can go back and ask again, but this wasn't an engineering decision, this was a building decision based upon how their parking lot has been working for them.
Why don't we go back and just double check and,
Yeah.
and take a look at the folks who do park there now, where do they go and how do they come across?
Because it might be different. The other thing, can I just say really quick, I love all the signage, all the painting on the ground, and this will be bus only, and I do love that.
Mrs. Jarvis.
I just want to, you haven't been, Mrs. Frank,
No.
to Grant. Their entrance is here. It's quite, it's
Right.
not in the center.
Right.
So everyone who's going to want to walk their kid or come near,
might
they're
wanna
going to
just-
want to park. These are the prime spots. This will be the people who are coming to visit for the day or stay. These will not be utilized as drop-off. I can't see that happening. Because even if the parents are going to walk in, they want to go where the door is.
Right.
So in the morning, again, there's not so many buses there either. And then in the afternoon, they must have a procedure established for lining the kids up and making sure that they go out. So if the principal says that this is all she needs, I'm inclined to trust her.
Anything else?
Mrs. Oquist, you are going to be double checking on this?
We will.
Yeah, I just wrote myself a note to check with the building again on a northern crosswalk.
Oh, good idea.
Thank you. And even if you folks can let us know how it's handled on a practical basis now, that would feel better.
Sure.
Bill, are you moving to costs with us?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, now we're in the cost.
The fun stuff was,
Yeah.
we wanted to do the fun stuff first.
And I just wanted to reiterate too, we went through a lot of iterations, and that's why this school ended up coming into bid pack 3. We just weren't ready to, we didn't have the right solution that everybody was comfortable with, and that's why we held off until now. And I think what we've got here is an efficient way of picking up 35 spots. Some of it's with striping, we closed off the middle, that gained us about 9 spots. Up in the northwest corner, that area was, what we kind of did is infill that and connect it to the existing concrete that picked up another 12 spots, and then it's some new concrete and such up in the northeast corner, but that staff lot that's proposed up there, that's going to get you another 15 spots. So didn't add a ton of area per se, and yet we were able to achieve 35 spots net gain in that site. So I think the plan that everybody came up with, I thought was very efficient, and I think for the money, we're actually getting quite a bit of parking, for the investment.
I can't read this too clearly. My eyes are getting old, I guess. But in the staff lot, are there any designated handicap spots in there?
In the staff lot itself, I don't believe so. Liz, they're up in the north part. We are in compliance with that. But
3, 4, 5, yep. We have-
there, in the proposed, there are 5 handicap parking spots. I'm trying to,
That extra, the new spot, the quote-unquote new area, the principal's already spoken with some of the teachers who actually work on that side of the building and talked to them about, you know, could you park there? And they said, yeah, that's great, because we usually dart through that door anyway. So that probably wouldn't, because it's not nearly big enough to hold all staff anyway.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be filled in pretty quickly with staff. It wouldn't really be on a regular day. Now, open houses and different, other people might park in that area, but on a general school day, those spots in here are going to be filled in by staff members. That's the plan.
Mrs. Brady.
I'm just curious, how do they get into that lot? Where are they coming from? They go through the main lot, and where do they turn to go in there?
Through the driveway to go.
yeah, there's a new curb cut essentially just to the far north,
Up here?
No, in between the two spots.
Oh, right here?
right up in here, kind of in that pebbly area.
You can't see it.
In between
There'll be a
the
way
two
to-
They're
spots.
going to go in between.
Oh,
It doesn't look
okay,
like-
She'll be able to
okay.
pull straight in there.
Gotcha.
That's
I see it. Thank
It
you.
ramps down for you to come in off the main lot.
Now, could there be a bus that is in their cross area, or no?
There's another reason why staff have been talked to beforehand who's going to park there, because once they go in there in the afternoons,
They will need to wait.
they'll need to wait the
Okay.
7 minutes for the buses to roll.
Okay,
But remember, in the afternoon, the buses generally will be
Yeah,
rolling
they're-
all at the same time.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
Let's roll into
there we go.
the actual recommendation. So, being smaller projects, we actually looked at this as one project. We didn't want to complicate it. So this was one bid. It was for Frost and Grant at the same time. We saw our normal cast of bidders for this work. It's been Nagel Paving Company and also Best Asphalt. We got similar results here as well. Happy to recommend Nagel Paving again. They have been awarded other work in the district for the first 2 bid packs, so once again, they'll have all of the pavement work this summer. I think they proved last summer that they're big enough and have the wherewithal to get the work done. They were the low bidder. We bid this out on March 16th. Last week, on April 3rd, we took 2 proposals for that, as we mentioned. There was one alternate. This was at Frost Middle School. There's an old manhole in the area that we're replacing. We took the alternate. The assumption is that manhole, once we excavate around it, is going to be old, falling apart, and require reconstruction or replacement. So we're assuming that and have included that in there.
If it's not, it'll just be a deduct, but you just have to assume that it is.
Early indications in what we've seen suggests that it may require replacement, likely. For Grant, so the total recommendation for Nagel Paving is $177,380. The split between that is Grant was $119,490, and Frost Middle School with the alternate of $5,000 was $57,890. So about 2/3 to Grant, 1/3 to Frost Middle School. We're recommending a 15% contingency here. The larger percent is truly just based on the fact that this is a smaller project and it won't take long to get into that. So 15% of that amount is $26,607 for a total recommendation of $203,987. As Mr. Francis said, we had some money tucked away for Grant. Frost it was a combination of what the city was doing and what the district's needs were in that area. So that was some money we had assumed for that, the $50,000. As you can see, we're roughly on budget, we're tracking on budget for that project, and
Something else I want to throw in, and I don't know if you
Yeah.
have the total numbers, but the only reason these came in 3 phases was because of design. We made some changes after design started and we wanted to address the Buchanan and the Randolph and the Grant parking concerns. So we did have some changes from our original plan. So to expedite what we already had done as far as design, we came in with those. And then we said, we'll come back with another. And we weren't done with Grant yet because we wanted to figure out what the right thing to do, so we had a 3rd phase. But the reality is, there isn't a Phase 1 budget, a Phase 2 budget. We put a budget for 2019 summer paving, and so all of these in totality, if it didn't go like we had done it with regarding to breaking them out, to bring them, to get them on the street, they would have all come at one time. So I believe the total numbers of what we had budgeted for summer 19 paving projects and where we came in with all three phases in totality, we're right around spot. I don't know.
Yeah, we really are. We're projecting maybe just over 2 million, and we're right in that neighborhood when you add up all the different pavement projects. This being the smallest wave, but
Some we came out ahead on, and some cost more than we originally thought as we went along, which is fairly common.
and our original plan, just to go back, was actually to address Emerson and Johnson as well. But when the needs arise with the elementary schools, we shift focus and kind of worked on these, and these became the priority. And in fact, that might be something as we look at next year, whether it be Johnson or Emerson, whichever roof we choose. Those were both slated for parking lots. Probably make a concession next year and try not to do both in the same area. I think it will just add some unnecessary confusion and complexity to the project. So something to take into consideration.
You can get up on the roof, but you can't come down.
Can't get to it.
Until August.
Park in the road. So, again, Nagel Paving, been a good company to work with. Certainly have the manpower. They are probably the largest paving company in the area. Have a plant here in Livonia, so again, have been very competitive with their bidding. Best asphalt was right there with them, within 10%. Just not low again.
Mrs. Owens.
So just for the benefit of our viewing audience, and just as a reminder to the board, when the difficult decision was made to close 2 of our schools last year, a number of the follow-up items were things that we talked with the community about moving ahead as priorities in our work. And so I just want to be clear about what Mr. Smith had just shared, which is that although we initially had other paving projects planned for this summer, we put those off to summer of 2019 potentially, and moved forward Randolph, which we brought to you at the prior committee meeting, Buchanan also at the prior, and then Grant. Because as you recall, those were all schools that were part of the merged school communities. And with the larger population came some additional challenges with regard to parking, traffic flow, drop-off, pickup, bus lanes. And although we were able to make some changes actually last summer in time for this year, one of the things that we know is, having lived it in those places, there was some additional space that we thought we could recapture. And so those priorities were moved up so that they will be done this summer. So just to be sure that we're following up with the community on those things, that once those decisions were made, we continue to look back at, what did the transition teams at the schools tell us? What did our district transition team tell us? What have we heard from the community? And then how can we be responsive to that? So the playground situation was one big piece of that, which we are excited to see coming to fruition as we speak. And then also the parking lot and traffic flow and design.
Any comments or questions?
For next,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr.
Thank
Smith.
Appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilberg, you're up. So next item is item C, LCTC graphic design computer purchase. CTE 61A added cost funds. Welcome, Mr. Wilberg.
Good evening, President Johnson, board members, and thank you, Mr. Centers. I'll be presenting on the next 3 agenda items, actually. And the first one is that graphic design computer purchase. This we spoke about on the March 26th study session, but it's a request to purchase 31 iMac desktop computers for the Career Center's graphic design class. As a reminder, those classroom computers are 6 to 7 years old and have essentially reached the end of their lives. We can't install the new software programs in those hard drives, if you will. We use Apple computers in the class based on the recommendations from the industry professionals and their advisory board. Mac computers are the industry standard, as well as the standard in the graphic design classes, college program classes. The funding for this purchase will be coming from the State of Michigan Career Technical Education Funding, referred to as added cost, or technically the 61A funds. This is a funding source given each year to the CTE programs to assist them with the added expense of running these career-oriented programs. Apple is a sole source provider, meaning that there's not a bidding process that takes place for these computers. So I submit for your further consideration, questions, and support, the purchase of to the tune of $47,554, the 31 Mac desktop computers for the graphic design class.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Mrs. Brett.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I know they need to be replaced, and the LTCT program is excellent for graphic design, and I think this only enhances the program, so I would support that.
It's a very exciting class. And they love their Macs.
Yes, for sure.
All right, anything else?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very good. The next agenda item, D, is regarding Career Center Chromebook purchases. I bring to the board for your continuing review, request to purchase Dell Chromebooks and carts. And this is a purchase of 3 classroom sets, 90 total Dell Chromebooks, and 3 housing carts. This is another follow-up item from our March 26th study session. And as a refresher, it is a request from the Career Center Administration to replace, again, 6-year-old laptops that have aged beyond functional use. The Chromebooks will enhance the instructional and learning environment of the sports medicine class, the pre-nursing, pre-medical class, and the intro to healthcare courses. Again, the funding for this purchase as well will be from the State of Michigan, Michigan Career Technical Education Funding, referred to as added cost, or the 61A funds. It's provided, 61A funds are provided each year to the CTE programs to assist in the purchase of CTE equipment. The total cost of this request is $32,703. So I submit for your further consideration, your questions, and support for the purchase of these Chromebook classes for the Career Center.
Great. Comments or questions about the Chromebooks?
No, another great.
Just to note that a lot of our schools have received updated Chromebooks, but the Career Technical Center has been waiting for those, so I'm sure they'll be very excited.
Yes, excellent.
So true, very true.
Yeah.
That is.
Very true. All right, thank you. Moving on, the last item is item E, Franklin High School flexible furniture purchase, which is part of the 2013 bond.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Centers, and this is that book that I passed around on each table. There is a book regarding the flexible furniture plan for Franklin High School, and just as a reminder, this is from the 2013 bond. There was a secondary furniture replacement initiative to the tune of $1.5 million. There was a district furniture committee formed, comprised of building administrators, and to date, through phase 1 and 2, over $1 million has been spent. The highest priority was to student desks and chairs, and through phase 1 and through phase 2, we've purchased over 6,500 student desks, single student desks, over 850 two-student desks, or the two-student tables, over 9,000 student chairs that are detached from those desks, which provides great movement and flexibility that students love, and cafeteria tables as well. This is phase 3 of this project, and it's a flexible furniture plan, if you will, and the idea behind the flexible furniture plan is an attempt to provide new and creative learning spaces for our students and our teachers. Our directions have been that the staff be involved in the design and the considerations of these areas, and that it be an area inclusive and available to the entire student population, that it not be, targeted simply for athletes or student congress. It's inclusive of all. It could be for enhancing classroom furniture or creating, new spaces. Each of the high schools has $75,000 to invest in their schools. Each of the middle schools has $40,000 in this flexible furniture plan, and the Career Center has $15,000 to invest in these enhancements, these furniture enhancements for their school. So the first up is Franklin High School, who's put together a plan that calls for improvements in their Career Information Center. I'll start with the Career Information Center. This you can follow through in your book, but in the Career Information Center, which is off the guidance area, if you will, guidance office area, but it's also it's a meeting location for small group mentoring and for individual drop-in tutoring. The effort in this room is designed to create several small group and flexible seating areas, for the individual tutoring or small group tutoring. It would also provide for several independent workstations. So that's the first part of the revitalization plan, if you will. The second part is in what is commonly referred to as room 509, or the transition room. In that book that you're looking at, it's referred to as G110, which is just part of the architecture design, if you will, or how they name it. But in this room 509, it's been a prior computer lab, but it's a large group room, and it currently houses Franklin's transition classes. The transition classes meet every day. In addition to mentoring and tutoring, it also provides, student skills of success, such as organization, setting priorities, accepting responsibility, and basically getting their assignments completed and turned in on time. The transition classes have senior mentors that help the 9th and 10th grade students. And like I say, in their plan, you can see there's several different tabletops, and again, small group areas where one mentor can oversee 4, 5, 6 students, and individual workstations as well, with some very contemporary type furniture. The third area of their plan is in one of the 4 computer labs at Franklin High School. And at Franklin, it's referred to as the rounds. There's 4 computer labs, similar as to Stevenson High School. But Franklin wants to create a new type of computer lab, if you will. With the windfall of over 20 Chromebook carts at the school now over the last several years, the need for a teacher to take their class to the computer lab, certainly has been reduced. They essentially can bring the computer lab to their class, and that's the love and the joy of those carts, the Chromebook carts. However, their standardized classrooms are not necessarily conducive to collaboration and cooperative projects, project-based learning that fits their creative vision. And what they've taken is one of their labs, Lab 501, and you can see the space there. It creates several different areas which students can use their personal devices, their laptops, their Chromebooks, and work together to research topics or prepare presentations. So it's much easier to, a teacher can take their class to those areas, and it's much more conducive to small group work and creating those presentations for the students to create those presentations. Again, it's an exciting plan. It's a contemporary furniture, and it certainly will revitalize and enhance learning at the school. And over the next several months, you'll see plans from all the high schools and the middle schools coming next. But we'll start with Franklin's plan. I submit to you for further consideration, questions, and support for the purchase of, to the tune of some $73,000, $142, Franklin's plan, flexible furniture plan.
Mrs. Bradford.
I think it looks wonderful. All the seating looks awesome. I do have a question on, I know you're redoing some of the computer labs, or these Computer Lab 501 in the large group room. My question is, when we put this seating in, will there be capability for kids to plug in these devices
yes.
at different areas around the room? Just checking on that as far as, if you were sitting at a station, would you have availability to plug in a unit instead of taking it over to a cart and plugging it in? Will there be outlets or things available for students to plug in right perhaps at the table?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay,
That's the
good.
plan.
That's just a question.
No, that's a,
What are you
See the
looking
little plugs on the table?
at? Well, Liz, apparently your eyesight's much better than mine.
no, it's a good.
I do see that.
It's a great
Okay.
question. I mean, would be very
Yeah, well,
frustrating.
that would be my first question, is if you were sitting at a table, you would want to plug your devices in and things, or kids would.
You can
So
walk
that's
around most
awesome.
high schools and find outlets in
Yes.
the hallways that kids have their devices plugged into. So
Well,
this would be right in
I'm
the-
assuming since it's a computer lab, it will already have all the junctions for plugging in, but some of the classrooms don't have that capability. There's only several plugs throughout the room, so I guess that's why I'm asking. Thanks.
Mr. Johnson.
Dan, I'm just looking at some of these pictures, and I'm assuming these are just sort of a perhaps something you can look at, but I'm looking at a table that has wheels on it. If we have a table with wheels, do we know if the wheels will lock so the table doesn't roll all over the
Boy,
place?
Yes, I think they do.
They better. I mean, I'm
That's how
sure,
they're designed.
I'm
Yes.
So that
quite
you can move them
confident.
and then.
And then lock them down, okay.
The idea is you can move the
You're
tables, create big
picturing
tables, you can
children
create a
whipping
space
the
like
table.
this with the tables. The whole idea is, you can do. you
Creative
can
movement.
Create a lot of different looks to that classroom.
Okay.
Yes,
I hope they do, yeah.
I'm confident they are, and certainly I'll get back to you if I find out otherwise.
Mrs. Bradford. Or Bonnefield.
That's okay.
Bird.
Yes, I forgot a lot of things on
Bert and Bradford,
Yes.
Bonnefield.
I know I
Who
am,
I
that's all
missing?
right.
Jarvis.
Yes. This is really exciting, and being on a lot of college campuses, also with my kids over these recent years, this is what a lot of the college campuses look like right now. So I think it's a fabulous transition for our kids, and it's so updated and so current. I absolutely love it. It looks really useful. It looks fabulous for independent or group work. It's terrific. It's exactly what we were hoping for when we set aside enough budget for flexible furniture, that we're not looking at just buying more straight desks and chairs. Can we put on our website some examples of this for folks who are tapping in and under our bond area? It's exciting to see the external parts of the building, but I'm not sure how much of this is on our website. And for folks in the public, I mean, we can see all this right now, and those who are going to be in the building certainly can, but a good part of our public does not go inside of our buildings, so they can, if they choose to tap into our bond area, I'd love for them to be able to see some of these exciting pieces that we're putting in.
Outstanding point. I mean, those students that were here 5 years ago, at school 5 years ago, would be amazed.
They would be
Just to have
absolutely
those
amazed.
separated desks
Yeah.
and chairs is
Yeah.
an incredible enhancement, but yes.
It's exciting to see it all coming together. Thank you.
Along those lines, I was going to say, I noticed there's an increase in a lot of photos on Twitter and Facebook, on those pages. That would be a wonderful opportunity once those, it comes to fruition. Maybe perhaps we could send out some nice photos of that, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you very much.
That concludes building and site, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Centers. That'll move us on to item 4, Finance Committee. Mrs. Bonnefield.
Thank you, President Johnson. Our first item of discussion tonight is for the appointment of the auditor, and Mrs. Smith will be helping us out with that.
you, Mrs. Bonifield. I'm happy to be here before you tonight and to bring a recommendation to appoint Plant Moran as our auditors for the 2017-18 financial statements. Our financial statements, as you know, are required by law to be performed every year, for us to put those together every year. We're also required to hire independent auditors to come in and examine those statements, make sure that everything is accounted for properly. We've used Plant Moran for a number of years now. They continue to add value. I recommend that we continue to use them in this for these financial statements because they are the leaders in K-12 accounting here in the state of Michigan. They also offer accounting advice throughout the school year. They're continually putting on workshops for school districts too, so that we can stay abreast of changes that are coming. And also, one huge advantage of sticking with Plant Moran is that they know our processes, they know our software. If we were to switch firms, we would need to take time to get another firm up to date with our staff, with our processes, with our software, and that's something that Plant Moran, because we've used them for a number of years now, they come in and they just hit the ground running. So they're asking a fee of $45,000 to perform an audit. There's also going to be a one-time fee of $1,500 to $2,500 related to the implementation of GASB 75. If you recall, a few years ago, we implemented GASB 68 related to post-employment pension liability, and now this new GASB 75, thank you, is related to post-employment health insurance benefits, and putting a number onto that, what the liability is. So this is a number that they look at statewide, and then we come up with a percentage of what is Livonia Public Schools' share of that liability. So there's a lot of legwork to get that up and going for this year. So again, there'll be just a one-time additional fee of $1,500 to $2,500, depending on the time involved for that.
Questions? Mrs. Burton.
Just a comment, and we talked about this at our study session, but for those in the public who may not have been there, because that study session was not televised, we did have a different auditor a few years back. There had been a suggestion that we may want to go with someone other than Plant Moran and make sure that other folks are also seeing our books as highly as Plant Moran is evaluating them. And they did, in fact, come back with just as strong of an audit result. And we have gone back with Plant Moran. I'm absolutely in favor of Plant Moran Cressa. The other firm has done a phenomenal job for us also. But I do agree with you in keeping with Plant Moran being such strong leaders in K-12 education and such great partners with our school district in many areas. But just so the public knows, Plant Moran has not been the only one who's been auditing our books in recent years. And thankfully, and thanks to you and to your entire department, those audit reports have always come back very strong. So thank you for your work year-round to make sure that they do.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. We will put this on the April 16th regular agenda. Is the regular agenda okay?
Yes.
You're good? Okay. The next item, we're bringing Mr. Francis back to help out Mrs.
By popular demand.
Yes. Maintenance and transportation vehicle replacement cycle.
Oh, so exciting.
Thank you very much. As you recall, we had the opportunity to go into depth at our study session about the current state of our fleet, both our bus fleet and our maintenance vehicle fleet. Just to remind you and share with the public, we maintain a fleet of 110 school buses. We were fortunate enough that we were able to replace 66 buses with our 2013 bond. So we have 66 buses that are 2014 or newer. That does leave us with 44 buses that range in age from 2004 to 2008. As you recall, we hit some hard times. The economy kind of dropped, and all of those non-essential purchases just ceased. And we're thankfully now in a better financial position. We're starting to gain some stability, and so now it would be the responsible thing to do is go back and look at the purchases that we have put off for so many years. So we've talked with our mechanic supervisor, as well as a transportation supervisor, and they're recommending that we replace 9 of our oldest buses, our 77-passenger full-size buses, the 2004 age, in this coming year. So this would be a purchase that would be coming out of our 18-19 budget, but if we're able to go ahead and get the board's approval, that'll allow us to get a purchase order out on the system and get those buses ordered and put together so that we'll have them ready to go sometime in early fall. I forgot too, the cost, that's important. We're estimating a cost of $792,000. We've now gotten a written quote that is coming lower, so we're happy about that. The quote is for $749,691. That works out to a cost of $63,299 for each bus. Thank you. 83. Can you tell?
It's okay.
For a cost, they're each $83,299 each. And this would be a purchase through the Michigan School Business Officials Bus Purchasing Consortium Program. So we're getting the best bang for our buck going this way.
So just to reiterate, as we talked about in the study session, because I do think it's important for the public, oftentimes folks will ask, how we plan ahead for these types of purchases. And so as you know, or you may know, the district for many years looked to replace a certain number of buses each year and had been on that cycle. Thus, you see buses from each year for a certain period of time. We do not have any buses from 2008 to 2014 in our fleet. As you know, that is a time in which the economy took a significant downturn, followed by a significant decrease in school funding from the state, and we went through some very, very lean times in this district where we had a loss of hundreds of positions, and also froze many of these purchases, which were not either urgent or crisis replacement purchases. What we'd like to do moving forward, because we were able to purchase with the generosity of our community and the 2013 bond, those 66 buses to get that process of replacement started. What we'd like to do is not only wait for bond monies to be able to do that, where then we have large numbers of buses all in the same vintage, but rather start a cycle that we look at over the next number of years as we continue to stabilize and grow our fund balance to be able to utilize a portion of our general fund, because those are the funds that we have to utilize. We're not able to use our sinking fund from our current sinking fund dollars for this purchase. So as we took a look at earmarking funds out of this year's general fund, one of the things we'd like to do is continue, and we've begun to look at that cycle going out for the next 2 to 3 years. And so we would expect to be bringing you, if all remains moving in a positive direction with regard to our funding and our fund balance, a process where we can start that cycle of replacement over again at this point and continue on, so that we have our buses spread out over a number of years, and that we're continuously replacing that, which will certainly help with our repair costs that we've seen skyrocket in those years from 2009 or 10 through the past, including this past year. I know Mr. Francis will cover that with regard to the maintenance vehicles as well. So when you look at the dollars that we sink into maintaining 14, 18, 20-year-old either buses or maintenance vehicles, that begins to be a drain of a couple $100,000 on the budget each year. So what we'd like to do is relieve that pressure and begin to start with the board a more regular replacement cycle now that we're in a better financial position. So that just gives you and the community a big picture. Sometimes you think, well, we covered that with the bond. We did, 66 out of the 110, but we still have a number that we'll need to look at over the next few years.
And we did, Mrs. Oakquist, stagger the buses over
3 years.
3 purchases, so
We
that
did.
we were cognizant of the fact that we
Absolutely.
did not want to have 66 buses all
Absolutely.
the same year.
Yes.
3 years, but still, they were kind of layered in there.
Without question, yes. So we'd like to continue to do that, and so that we have that spread out over
Okay,
time. Yes.
Questions? Mrs. Frank?
A while ago, we approved surveillance cameras or video cameras for the buses. I think we had them for all buses in our fleet.
We do now.
Okay, so will they transfer to the new buses, or do the new buses come with their own system, or how does that work?
You know, we get the company to come out and.
They would transfer it.
Transfer
They take
the
the old
cameras.
and put it on there.
Yeah.
Any other?
Good question.
One thing to add too, I know I shared this at our study session, I just want to reassure the board and the community that we do have the state police that come out and do a check of all of our buses. So these buses are old, but they are safe to be on the road, they're safe to transport our students. But they've just reached the end now of their useful life. And we're now, as Ms. Osquist said, we're putting more money into the buses than what they're actually worth.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll see this for a vote on April 16th. Okay. And we'll put that on the regular agenda. And our last item, oh boy, you guys get to go. Mr.
No.
So they're actually
we're
going to be
not
two
done.
separate motions.
Oh,
One will
sorry.
be for the buses, and the other will be
Oh, that's right.
for the maintenance.
I am so sorry.
Maintenance vehicles and.
But if you just want to put it down, we're good.
Sorry, yes. Okay, we're going to move on to the maintenance
Okay, I'll
vehicles.
go through some two different ones. Okay. All right. We are recommending the purchase of 4 Ford T-150, those are the Transit 150 utility vans, 3 F-250 pickup trucks with plow and tow packages, and 2 T-Connect or Transit Connect vans. These would all be through Gorno Ford and the My Deals State of Michigan Purchasing Consortium. So to give you a little background, actually the total amount for all 9 vehicles comes to $256,411. Just for breaking it out, the 2018 Ford Transit 150 XL vans are $25,220. The 2018 Transit Connect vans are $23,971. And the 2017 F-250 pickup trucks are $35,863, and that is with the plow and tow package on them. Just a quick note on the 2017, the reason we aren't getting 18s but rather 17s, this is actually a better version for us. The chassis is stronger, it actually has the 350 on it, so when we put the salt box on there, it will hold in a stronger manner. So our supervisor of the mechanics, our garage supervisor, is actually quite excited about, quite excited that those are still remaining on the lot that in the inventory for us to get. I saw a hand go up. Do you want a question? You want me to go? Okay.
I had a question because the total number you said was 256,411. What I have on my sheet is 254,411. I just want to make sure.
Oh, did I remember? 250.
The back is correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't catch that either.
Okay.
So there's
It's 256.
It's 256? Okay.
Someone take a calculator.
Where does it say here?
Just want to make sure we're.
The one memo has,
yeah,
there's
okay.
2 memos, and
Okay.
there's the 2 different
Right.
numbers. So just to, thank you, good catch. Just to also talk about inventory of the vehicles, what we're doing here in a larger picture is we are replacing, we're going to take 16 of the vehicles that are at their end of life, that are in the worst condition of the batch that we have, and we're going to set those to auction, get whatever we can for those. We're going to then move down a few of our current maintenance vehicles to the high schools, and we also are going to send one to LCTC and also for the maintenance supervisor who goes between Cass and Marshall. So we're going to repurpose some of the the best of the older ones. They won't take as much of a beating. The buildings, vans and trucks don't do the same type of work or put on the same kind of mileage as the maintenance vehicles that are used by the central office staff that drive around the district and do that kind of work, like pushing snow or deliveries, et cetera. We're actually going to net out having less vehicles because at this point in time, we have less staff that need to drive around vehicles, so we're actually bringing in 9 and going to move out 16 of them. So we're slightly reducing our fleet to basically fit the current staffing that we have. And the plan would be, as we go through and as Mrs. Oquist had discussed, purchasing vehicles in the future, not buying everything at one time, so we have a whole bunch of 2018s, but as we get a handful more each cycle, the current, more of the current ones that our maintenance staff use can then push down to the buildings, and the buildings ones who now got those last years of life out of theirs can be sent to auction, and we'll just continually move those vehicles through the system to get as much life and use out of them as we possibly can before sending them off.
Just to add on to, the Administrator of Operations did confirm that these vehicles should be available before June 30th, so we're hopeful that we'll get these before June 30th, and then we'll be able to take them out of the 17-18 general fund budget. In the event that something happens and there's a holdup in the process, and we would earmark a portion of the funds so that we could pay that out of the 18-19 budget.
Questions? Mrs. Burton?
We obviously, if we're going to have a net fewer vehicles, it's less gas cost, less maintenance, et cetera. Do we also pay less insurance if we have fewer vehicles, or is there kind of a blanket number of vehicles that they cover?
We do provide a vehicle list to the insurance company, so yes, I think with them coming off, I don't know how much of a savings it'll be, just because they are, older vehicles and probably don't have a lot of value to them, but I would expect to see some savings with the insurance costs.
Okay, thank you.
And our mechanics have been working to keep these maintained and on the road so that our maintenance crews can use them. Less maintenance on those vehicles that have to be worked through our mechanics. They can then turn their attention to continue to work on any other vehicles, the general maintenance of our buses and our vehicles, and all of those processes.
So we're going to save on duct tape and bubble gum?
Let me tell you, they get those things on the road. They do a heck of a job on them, but there's a certain time when you can only do so much, and you're paying more to put something together than the actual value of that vehicle.
Okay.
Just like with the buses. So yeah, we'll cut down on our chewing gum.
Okay.
And I think you mentioned at the study session that some of the vehicles actually are not roadworthy, or road.
And some have already been pulled.
Safe.
Yes, our
That when we
mechanics
say,
supervisors pull
when we say end of life, we mean end of life.
And we do what we can to keep them on the road, but let's just say that we'd be better off replacing them. Because they are maintained and we get them on the road, but they're at the end of life.
Okay, any other questions on this one? And you're gonna present two different motions?
Yes.
We'll do two different cap sheets and two different motions.
Okay, is there anything else on B that I've forgotten? We're good? Okay, now we're gonna move
Thank you.
on to C, let you guys go, and we're
Thank
gonna
you.
bring up Mr. Willenborg.
He's coming back. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, and good evening again. Ms. President Johnson, board members, thank you, Ms. Bonifield. I'll start by saying we've come a long way since 1763, where the Ojibwe and Sauk tribes attacked Fort Michilimackinac. But I'm pleased to continue our discussion from our study session of March 26 regarding the addition of lacrosse to our interscholastic athletic offerings in the Livonia Public Schools. I can say the status quo regarding our athletic offerings is we've pushed it, we've broken it, and we're, with the addition of bowling and a potential addition of lacrosse, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. I have several talking points to share about adding lacrosse. Again, we started a discussion a couple weeks ago, and before I get there, I'd like to also recognize Mr. Steve Archibald, who did the legwork of this research and coordination, if you will. But for many years now, LPS has not been in a financial situation to approve additional sports offerings. Some things have changed. There's a little opportunity here, and we ran Mr. Archibald ran an athletic interest survey last year and conducted in the spring of 2017, asking students, if they could play anything, what would they want to play? And lacrosse was the number one hit of the students. It was the number one hit in terms of interest to the students. Lacrosse is a Michigan High School Athletic Association sponsored sport for both boys and girls, and it's a spring sport season. It's just underway as we speak, if you will. Lacrosse has 18 competition dates, carries approximately 20 players on a squad. It is difficult to gauge the interest level of lacrosse at each high school. Currently, there is a community boys team that is competing with the KLAA teams. The team consists of 12 Stevenson students, 7 Franklin students, and 2 Churchill students. There's no girls on that team. There's not a girls team affiliated with the area that I'm aware of. Adding lacrosse is more challenging than adding bowling. The ADs have offered several areas of concern, and I share that there is concern about the overall interest level. The interest survey shared with us it's the number one hit, but who actually shows up to play is another consideration. So there is a concern whether we can run programs at each school, teams at each school. There is a concern of athletes leaving their current spring sport team to play lacrosse, which then negatively impacts those other teams, which could be softball, baseball, track and field, and the like. There's also concern about the facility usage, especially during the spring. Those fields are constantly used for practice and contests, and it's tough to fit in another team considerations. There's concern for events management. There's concern for availability of quality coaches, which is a concern expressed by other ADs in the KLAA. There are some Title IX issues to deal with, but we have been in contact with our district attorney, and the key is that we're offering opportunities, for both boys and girls. And the concern, of sustainability. What might this look like in 4 years, especially if we can't run teams at each school. With the Board of Education concurrence, our plan is to advertise for interest meetings at each high school during the last 2 weeks of April, coming up soon. These intent to play meetings will be held during we're looking at the week of May 7th, and from that point, we'll better know how to advance. If we were to say what's our plan at this point, we're discussing a plan to offer one unified boys team and one unified girls team, LPS girls team, which means, it'd be a combined team of Stevenson, Churchill, Franklin, for both boys and girls. But we'll know more as we get have those intent to play meetings. We would need approval from the Michigan High School Athletic Association to run a unified team. If approved, the unified status, like I said, can only last 4 years. When we do our current analysis of budget considerations, we're looking at a cost for this one unified boys and one unified girls team of approximately $35,000, which includes 2 coaches' salaries, uniforms, equipment, although much of the equipment would be personally owned, would be a personal expense of the athletes, officials, and transportation. Approximate cost of $35,000. Revenue from pay to participate fees, approximately $10,000 to $12,000. So a total projected cost for, like I said, the one unified boys, one unified girls team of approximately $25,000. This would fall under a budget consideration, for your approval at a future date. But I, present to you for your continuing consideration, for your support and questions, this exciting topic to to add lacrosse to our athletic offerings in the Livonia Public Schools. Ms. Bonnefield.
Questions? Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson, President Johnson.
Dan, you may or may not know the answer to this question. When the survey was done in the spring of 2017 and lacrosse was number one, was there a breakdown, do you know, between boys and girls in that survey, or was it just an overall number?
I have an overall number of 240 positive responses.
Okay.
For lacrosse.
Wow.
So there was a lot, but again, that's until they actually show up, it's kind of.
And that, remember, that was some of our middle schoolers as well, up through 11th grade at that time. And so of those, who would come out and try out, who would be able to make the team, et cetera. But that was the interest across all of our secondary schools, middle school and high school.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yeah, that was my question. When you're having your informational meetings, you will make sure you include the incoming ninth grader group, so you'll have to spill into the middle schools to have them come to the meetings.
Including some of our private and parochial.
Oh, perfect.
We've already planned to reach out.
I figured you guys were right on it, but
That's
thought
a great
I'd ask.
question. Absolutely.
Mrs. Burton?
With the informational meetings, are we emailing the parents also to let them know that these meetings are going to be taking place?
Our plan is to advertise in the Observer and get something out, and then have flyers that'll go to all these other schools and be advertised with flyers in the high schools and through Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
Can we, seeing as our parents utilize our email?
Oh, probably.
We could put an email blast out
Yeah.
to
We are,
parents.
okay. Just want to make sure that's, especially some of our younger students.
Sure.
I'd like to say they're all responsible enough to hear the announcements and come to the meeting, but seeing as this is something new, I'd like to make certain that we get that out to as many people, as many ways as possible.
Right, and right now, we look at several days at each school, and that the students would come in, and we'll have a computer sign up. We'll have several questions for them to answer, and flyers to take home, and ADs would run those meetings.
Great, okay. If we wind up with enough response, such that we have enough kids at each of the three schools to run the program, will we be potentially looking at 3 teams for the 3 high schools? I mean, boys and girls?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. I'm ever the optimist. You can tell, yeah.
Potentially, yes, of course, that.
But that would increase our
That-
funding.
That would increase the funding, absolutely.
Yep.
And concerns on field
Yes.
usage and, and the like.
Right. I'd like to, as you said, thank yourself, Mr. Archibald, our athletic directors, our athletic council, I believe, who was consulted on this also. It has been, to my knowledge, at least 15 years since we've been able to add a sport, and it may be far greater than that. But having weathered through a lot of very lean times as an entire state, if not an entire country, it is such a complete joy to be able to add something that our students directly are asking for. And this has been requested, as bowling had been. I share equal enthusiasm, which is about doing backflips down the hall, that we can finally add these kinds of things back for our students again, and enhance our program that I always have believed is terrific, but to be able to add again is wonderful. Thank you so much for listening to our students, listening to our parents, and taking action when we're finally able to do so in granting some of the requests that have been brought forward. I am thrilled. Thank you very much.
Oh, and you're right to recognize the athletic directors who've poured a lot of work into this.
Yes.
And, have shared a lot of uncomfortable concerns, but,
Right.
are fully on board.
And they're the ones who are going to have to implement a
Absolutely.
lot of it at the building level.
It's a lot of work.
Yes, thank you to Mr. Hammy and Mr. Haig and Ms. Hyman. It's their work is definitely appreciated, but I'm thrilled and fully supportive.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. I wanted to thank you and the entire athletic staff and administration for being willing to start small with a united team, because, there's going to be kids, 4th graders, 5th graders, who will now look towards their high school days and say, I'm going to play lacrosse. And at that point, the program will grow. But you're willing to start now without waiting for it to be full. And that's commendable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? So I just wanted to say, I very much appreciate the fact that the athletic directors and everyone has concerns, and they're still willing to move forward with us. And I think many of us have been approached by parents in the district who have had very strong feelings about the fact that we don't have a lacrosse team. So I am just really thrilled that we're going to try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll have to take another avenue and take a look at it. But I think we're really going to have a positive outcome. And so much of our high school experience is not only in the classroom, but having a spot for an activity after school and different things like that. So as much as it's an athletic event, it's very much part of the high school and the growing for our kids. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's one of the most growing sports in the country, and I think last time we talked about keeping up with the Joneses. So it fits that, certainly.
Okay, and this is just an FYI for us at this point?
It is. We'll keep you
Correct.
posted after the interest meetings are held at the schools, and you will see this as part of our overall budget proposal that comes to the board in the spring.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And if I could go off script just for a moment, just to recognize our testers tomorrow in the secondary schools, our 9th graders taking the PSAT, our 10th graders taking the 10th grade PSAT, and our juniors. Our 11th graders taking that SAT. It's a big day for them. I'm sure they're
Anxious.
heading for bed right now to get plenty of rest and eat well in the morning. We wish them best. Remember, all you can do is the best you can do, and you're bigger than a 3 or 4 digit number.
Yay. Go, Mr.
Good luck to our
Willenberg.
juniors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willenborg. We are now on to agenda item D. We're doing School of Choice update, and Mr. McDonald and Mrs. Scott are going to present for us.
So I'm going to just give a little bit of background, since this was in addition to our agenda for the Board of Education this evening. As you know, I've been updating you each week in the board update with regard to the number of applications we've received. Earlier this year, we brought to you a recommendation for our district to participate, once again, in limited schools of choice as part of the 105C option that is provided through the Michigan Department of Education. So one of the things we wanted to cover with you this evening is the number of applicants that we have received to date by grade level. We'd like to share with you a little bit of information. We've been talking quite a bit over this past week with regard to, you may recall when we first brought to you the proposal, we shared with you that generally, over our 4-year average, when you take a look at the number of students who apply, who are accepted, who then receive their placement, register, start the first day of school, and are still with us at count day, that we end up with about, on average, about 82% of those that we initially accepted. And so when we budget, that's what we include in our budget, is approximately 82% of the total that we've requested from the board. What we'd really like to do this year, based on the applications we've received, is get us closer to being able to count on 100% of those students, or 100% of that total coming to us as part of the budget, and also as a way to continue to supplement any enrollment decline that we continue to experience, because as you know, our senior graduating classes are still much larger than our incoming kindergarten classes. And so we've looked over the past number of years through our attraction and retention efforts, ways to draw students into Livonia Public Schools and keep them here. So what we'd like to bring to you this evening, 1, is an update on the number of applications. 2, where that leaves us with regard to our initial recommendation to you. And as you may recall, a couple of years ago, we requested a modification of that at a particular grade level based on the number of applications that we received, and also based on our projected enrollment and staffing at that time. So Mrs. Scott and Mr. McDonald have done a considerable amount of legwork. Again, we've met on this topic a number of times over the past week. And we'd like to bring to you some updated information and also ask for your consideration as we move forward.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to start by how I would normally have started a class when I was teaching. I'm going to ask that you follow with me on this and don't move ahead. If you go ahead, you're going to get confused by what I'm saying. So as we walk through it, I'll walk you all the way through that so that the numbers actually make sense.
Okay.
So to begin, again, our window closed. We had our 30-day window. It closed March 29th at 4 p.m. We had 291 applicants from 16 different districts around here. I think we only had one district, though, that was, 2 districts that were out of county. I think Hazel Park is out of county,
Yes.
right? I think they're Oakland County and a Farmington. Everybody else was a Wayne County applicant. We had established available seats in 9 different grades that we had brought to the board, and then 2 programs at the 9th grade level. We have applicants that have exceeded our original seat allocations in all but 3 of those areas. 4th grade, and those are the ones that are on this sheet here, by the asterisk. 4th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. In those seats, we had less, or in those grades, we had less applicants than seats that we had originally said we could fill. For the remainder, every other grade there in those Kappa and the Global Ed programs, we'll be running a lottery tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And that's where we go through and literally choose one by one and rank, put them on the sheet from 1 to filled, and then we start a wait list 1 to the very last applicant's name is pulled out of the hat. Our original seat allocation that we brought to the board for your approval was 171 total seats, which is what you see in the middle column in the bottom there. That was an estimated $1.325 million in potential revenue with those. When we first began this program, we received direction from the state, and this goes back a number of years, and it was a rather newer program in the state itself. And over time, it's evolved. The understanding of the program has evolved, and recently we've had conversation with the Department of Education again to get more clarification on what we can and cannot do with the waitlisted students. So previously, when I spoke before, I said that we had to have, if we were to ever exceed our allocated seats that you originally approved, that we would have to take all students. That is not the case. We can take more students, and the reason being is you don't know necessarily what you're going to have come middle of the summer, the fall, because you may have 30 kids that move out in a grade, and now you have 30 more seats that you could fill. Maybe it's 5 seats, but we don't know what the landscape's going to be 3 weeks from now, or even by the fall. So the state now allows for you to be able to say you can take 10 additional, even though you have 20 on the wait list. What you can't do is pick and choose which 10 are on the wait list. The wait list is established and it's set, and we must offer based on that wait list. If you want to offer 10 more, we can offer 10 more. Okay, so that is a change from what I had previously stated to you.
Okay.
Now I'm going to have you go to the next page. Turn the page, and we will focus our attention to the upper left where there is no highlighting. Okay? What you're looking at there is, again, going back to what Andre had said of 82%. So when we offer a seat, we get about 82% of those will actually be there on D-Day. Some of the reasons that applicants or their families turn us down, their siblings didn't get in. They've tried to get in a kindergartner, a first grader, and a 7th grader, and the 7th grader's in, but the first grader may have got in, the kindergartner's on the wait list, and they don't want to run 3 different schools in 2 different school districts. They also apply everywhere. Farmington's running a program, Canton's running a program, and if they're trying to change what their district is for their child, they may know I may be on a wait list, so they apply to multiple places. Transportation issues. Once in a while, people didn't realize that they were going to have to provide transportation. or that the transportation is going to take 25 to 30 minutes in the morning to get to the place that we have a seat. Sometimes they're very specific. I only want X school, and if we can't get them into X school at that grade, they say, no, I'll pass. So we were much more diligent last year in really working with them to try to get those commitments early so that if these situations arose, we got them to say, no, we don't want to come, so we can offer that next student in line and get them in and ready for the first day of school with us.
Because, just to jump in, unless they verbally release their spot, once you've accepted them, you have to hold their spot until the first Friday of the first week of school. So we cannot go to the wait list unless they have turned down their spot. So if they say, nope, I'm coming,
Right.
I'm going to be registering, I'll be there next
then
week,
they
I'll be there next month, we cannot go to the wait list. You have to hold their spot until the end of the first week of school.
We will start calling, once we have our wait list and we get the letters out, we'll start making phone contacts with them and setting up registration timeframes with them. And that, at that time, we actually do get some of them that will say, no, we're not going to do this, and we'll bring the next person in. So, yeah, we try to be very diligent with that. So, as we look at that, pay particular attention there to 4th, 7th, and 8th grade. If we already know that we're not going to have, we haven't filled those seats that we had originally said we could do, and then you apply that 82% theory to that, we're really only going to fill about 37 of those 56 seats in those 3 grades. So we're already now below 19 students or 19 seats below that 171 that we originally had said that we could take in. And that goes back to what Andrea said, that maybe we'll look at this maybe in a little bit different light. So as you then look into the highlighted areas, if we took and offered all the students in grades 1 through 4 that had applied, and then say we could reasonably expect 82% of those to come and accept and enroll and be there on the first day of class, that would be about an additional 10 students in that area, okay, across essentially 3 grades, because we're already not filling 4th grade.
Got it.
Okay? So that would help kind of offset there what you're seeing in 7th and 8th grade, where we're going to be down, in all likelihood, about 14 students from what we had allotted seats for.
Okay.
All right? 5th and 6th grade, in the same vein there, if we apply that idea of if we have 26 applicants in 5th grade and 33 in 6th grade, if we apply that 82% idea, we'd be looking at potentially being able to offer 6 additional students in 5th and 12 in 6th grade. We want to make sure we're doing so within our staffing allocations so that we're not adding classes typically. That's how we've always seemed to want to look at the school of choice program as a way to do that. What I want to do now is we'll come back to the kindergarten at the bottom, but I want you to go to the next page there, and I want to talk about a scenario where maybe that theory changes slightly potentially. Okay? So hypothetically, okay, if we had 354 students in one of our 6th grade buildings, that would be an allocation of 12 students, or excuse me, 12 teachers, which gives us a 29 and a half class size. Okay, and that would be a normal practice for us. If we were to take on an additional 9 students in that grade level at that building, that would bring in additional revenue of $69,750. And when we calculate a per pupil, we use $77.50 as our calculation, so less than our FTE.
Okay.
So really quickly, remember, we can't get more than our FTE. So when we get a student from Novi, if they have a higher per pupil, we still only get our $82.99.
Right.
However, if we get a student from another district that has a $7,500 per pupil allocation, we get that. And so the average is, rather than counting on 8,000 to be as accurate as possible, so we're utilizing the 7,700. 750.
And with that, the cost of a new teacher at BA1 with benefits and FICA and MESPERS would be around 69,000. Okay, so if we could bring in 9, it would offset the cost of a new teacher. So then we'd have 363 students at that building with 13 teachers and an average class size of 27.9. So we can reduce class size by 1.5 students, per class, which helps, those students, it helps that teacher, that building, by taking in 9 more kids and hiring 1 new staff member. So it's another way to look at how we could utilize additional school of choice seats or students, however you want to look at that.
It's easier to do that with 5, 6, because you're talking about, anywhere from 8
Yes.
to 12, 13
Yes.
classrooms. So you can easily affect, with that.
It's not, you're
One
exactly
staff
right. It's
member.
not as easy to do that at a,
Elementary.
Yeah, whether
second
it's 3
grade
or
class
4.
in elementary where you only have 3 or 4 classes.
Right.
So this is a scenario that we look at about every day from this day moving forward, is we take a look at exactly where those numbers are, utilizing the ratios that are set by the district and determining the staffing allocation. And so one of the things is, it may come out exactly like this, it may not, because if we're up 12 kids already, then we wouldn't be looking to recommend this, because we have our own kids naturally, and we would hire the teacher accordingly. However, it's when we're in those in-between scenarios, so whether it's something like this, whether it's, we've shared with you in the past, combination classes, where if we're able to put 3 students at one grade level and 2 at another, it's just enough to allow us to be able to eliminate the combination and have straight grade levels, and have one more FTE, one more teacher assigned to that school based on adding, a half a dozen students. And so we appreciate the state's willingness to provide some additional flexibility to districts, because it allows us to be, have much more laser-like precision as we get closer with regard to how many students specifically off of the wait list we may want to consider.
So we go back to page 2. That being said, in the yellow there, we know we can do this right now. We have the seats right now available in those 3 grades, first, second, and third grade, to be able to take on an additional allocation of students, essentially offering all of our applicants, and doing so within our staffing allocations that we have right now. So that would be one that we would be asking for your consideration on.
So just to be clear, we're not, at that point with the yellow, we're still not exceeding our total number of students, but we may be exceeding it at a particular grade level. So where we asked you for 20 students at 4th grade, we know we're not going to get to 20 because we have 18 applicants. And in all likelihood, we'll probably capture maybe about 15 of those. So right now, we're already down 5 from the 171. What we want to try to do is get us a full complement of students, but it may look a little different by grade level. So for instance, rather than 15 students at 2nd grade, we would look at potentially up to 22 students. And then ultimately, if we can capture 18 of those, we've now added 3 to the 2nd grade allocation, which has offset some of the loss from the 4th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, where we know we're not going to reach the threshold that we initially brought to you. So initially, our request is to allow you, to ask you to allow us to use the flexibility the state is giving us with regard to moving into the wait list by a certain number of students at those grade levels where we know we have the staffing allocation and where we know we're not going to fill at the other grade levels. So that's the initial piece of information. So we haven't exceeded the overall request, but perhaps at a grade level, more students than we had initially anticipated.
Mrs. Burton?
So basically, we're looking at the column that's listed as 82% of applicants. That's what's being proposed to the board right now in terms of accepting that number?
Yes.
Okay.
For 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade there.
Right. And
In addition
and
to the
4th.
original seats.
In 4th, but 4th grade, really, we're essentially going to, we're
Right,
going to
we're
be
taking
under
all-
what our
right,
regular.
exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and I'm looking at, we have 9 elementary buildings at that level, at
Yeah.
those levels. So we're still looking at approximately an average.
10.
10 buildings. So we're looking at adding an average of 2 students per grade to each one of those buildings. And I'm just looking at it.
Do you mean in total?
In total,
I mean, like, we have, looking at the 82% of applicants, we have 20 first graders.
Mhm.
So over our 10 buildings, we're looking at an average of adding 2
Yep.
first graders
Right.
Yep.
from schools of choice.
Yep.
I mean, I'm looking at it to see from a public perception, are we going to
Sure.
have an influx of a huge number at a given grade? And I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing an average of about 2 students per grade per building. Right, okay.
But they'll be moved around.
Right,
depending on
that'll
the
be an
slot
average,
opening.
exactly.
It'll
It
be
might
average,
be 1
but-
here
Yeah,
or
there
0,
might be a
but it
school
might be
where
3 or
there's
4.
none at a grade level, but there are
Correct.
4 at a different grade level,
Yep.
based
Right.
on where they have the availability, and where, in some cases, last year, what we found was, because we were able to add a few, we were able to keep the staffing where it was, rather than have to decrease,
Right.
thus raising class size for all of the remaining at that grade level. So I know that can be difficult for the public to understand, that doesn't work through that staffing. That's why we wanted to show you the 5th and 6th grade example. We could show you that same example, 50 times over at the K-4 schools. And again, what both Mrs. Scott and Mr. McDonald work to do is to place those students so that we can maintain the staffing we have, in some cases eliminate combinations where we may have had them, or be able to add a staff member in a particular place, because we were able to round out the numbers appropriately.
And of course, if they have a sibling, we try to also put that
In the same
sibling at
building.
that school where their sibling is
If you
all
can.
currently.
Right.
So we always have that too. So it's a little more complicated than,
A little bit of Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Have we usually been able to accomplish that?
yes,
Okay.
generally.
Yeah, I mean, that's our number one, that's our number one right there, so that the families can stay together.
Right.
So.
Oh, yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Mrs. Scott, once the window's closed, it's closed, even though we didn't get to so there's not any opportunity for us to regain any of those.
No.
So this is,
Once that 4 o'clock hit, if someone walks in at 4:01, we could not accept it.
Well, even in the grade levels that we
Correct.
are under.
Correct.
Okay.
Your max window is 30 days.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs. Burton?
We've asked this before, ever since we've started schools of choice, but what are we seeing with discipline with students who are schools of choice, and what are we seeing with academics from students who are coming in from another district for schools of choice?
I think pretty well across the board, if you ask the principals, they really don't even know who they are without looking at a piece of paper and trying to figure out, oh, that's your address. Then they might go, oh, yes, you're a school of choice. But other than that, we don't, any more, students who are late, we have a lot of students sometimes who are late, and it doesn't have anything to do with that they're school of choice. So sometimes they have a bigger commitment because they know that they're traveling and choosing to come to Livonia. So, but we haven't noticed anything that tells us that school of choice students are any more challenging than what, we would normally have.
Okay. Are there any other potential negatives that you see after we've been running this program for a few years now? It's a positive in terms of being able to retain our class sizes, our teachers, et cetera. And in this case, potentially even lower our class sizes, and as you said, Mrs. Oquist, potentially eliminate some of our split classes. So those are all positives.
Right.
Are there any other potential negatives that you see that the board should consider? That any of the three of you would see?
What we've recommended each of these years is such a small fraction of our overall
Yes.
population of 14,500 students that we're talking, in most cases, we've been well under 200 students. For a couple of years, we were under 100 students. So you're talking about spread over, up to, at one point, up to 16 different schools. We just have not seen any impact with regard to that. And so we really feel that by far the benefits have outweighed any negatives. We've talked to you before about some of the issues with regard to folks who have chosen not to remain on because of the transportation demands of traveling from literally another city, in some cases another county, in which case you have some of that transition of students coming and then and going. Although we haven't normally seen that during the year. It's normally at the end of a year to not move on. There are some costs that come with students that have unique needs. And so we accept all of our students. And so if they are within the county, then we take on those costs as part of, as we would with any student who registered within our district. If they're out of county, then we would make an arrangement with the ISD of that county to pay for the difference in costs of educating that child between the per pupil foundation and the actual costs. So when you have students who are within Wayne County who have those unique needs, that may be an additional cost on our general fund. And so, again, we do not make any of our decisions of acceptance based on that, but that would certainly be an impact on the district. As we have, students that come in that have needs that already exist, we would be required to fulfill those needs.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, you were starting to talk about the kindergarten numbers. Is that what you're going to go to next?
Sure, I'll talk about kindergarten.
Okay.
So kindergarten's a little different in that we had generally, I think as a district, or at least over the past 4 years, there was a strong interest in having the majority of the students that we bring in come at that kindergarten grade level. There's many, many positives that come with a child and a family being able to start with us in Livonia Public Schools from the start of their educational career. And so over time, you've generally seen that be the largest number that we were proposing with regard to acceptance. It also is by far the area in which we receive the most number of applications. That's not unusual. Folks are making a decision of where to start. It's often more difficult to make a change once you've started in a district or a school for a couple of years. And we had brought to you this year a recommendation for 30 seats, which is what we thought we could allocate within the staffing that we had tentatively assigned for this coming school year. Our applications came in at 81 kindergartners, which was a significant number. And so that posed a bit of a dilemma to start, because when we brought this to you previously and we asked you to accept the additional students off of the wait list for kindergarten, the differential was not quite that large. And so we ended up saying that was when our guidance from the state was, if you took any, you would need to take them all. Well, this would be a much bigger bite to take. And so once we found out that we had the flexibility of taking, for instance, another 20 students out of those 51, or something, 10 students, whatever that number would be, once we see our kindergarten enrollment numbers stabilize and come in over the next couple of months, that began to get our wheels thinking about bringing back to you a recommendation to provide the district and our administration the flexibility to take up to a certain number of additional kindergarten students based on our enrollment patterns that we see coming in. As you know, Mrs. Scott watches those like a hawk, and then I ask her on top of, after she asks all of our principals, how many we have. And so we're generally on track this year with pretty similar numbers to last year. Do you want to give a quick update on that?
I do.
And then I'll come back to these.
I would love to do that.
Okay.
So as of March 28th, we have 629 kindergartners registered, and I know that there's been more because they've been trying to call and tell me to add more to their numbers. I said, don't give them to me right now because you just can't keep track of it. So 629 as of March 28th. Last year at this time, at that particular time, we had 542.
Wow.
So that's 87 more this year than what we did, what we had last year. So if the trend continues, then we're in good shape. But that's the problem, though. You don't know what will happen. Just a point of reference, because I just had to check myself, that on that Saturday registration, we had 44 completed registrations, but then we also had additional ones that needed to come in and complete their registration. So Did that help push it? I don't know. Did more marketing? Well, we did a lot of marketing last year, so you just don't know, what all of that means. So we get another count in the end of April, and so we'll see, what that means. Over the summer last year, we had about 125, if I remember correctly, registrations for only kindergarten, but that also included the 30 for school of choice.
Okay.
So, if we could get 200 more between now and my goal is 900. I always said 900, that's it. So, more would be great. So we'll see, what happens with that, and then that will tell us whether or not,
Gotcha.
should we take more than 30? Will that be good? The thing that we don't want is that we do have a couple of grades who are in the lower 800s. So that impact will be felt all the way up through 12th grade. And so it would be nice just to be able to have that number closer to the 900 number, so that's where we are.
So as we take a look at the applicants, we wanted to let you know of the 30 seats, the first 17 will have to go to siblings of current LPS School of Choice students. So that really only leaves 13 new seats, new families available on the lottery. And again, as we shared with you, when a family is not able to get in at each grade level, they generally don't come in at any of the grade levels. And so we were especially cognizant of that, because now one of the things we had always hoped we would see would be that a number of our applicants would be siblings coming in, because we already have the families, they've already become part of our LPS family. And so in this case, that certainly holds true. But it leaves very few new families we can bring on board. And so we anticipate that we would like to consider adding potentially up to perhaps another 15 to 20 kindergarten students off of the wait list. But again, we'd like to monitor our kindergarten enrollment first, and then come back, and we would continue to update you. It would not be something that it would be required by our policy that you would have to vote on, but we'd certainly want to continue to update you and update the community on this as we have in the past. And so what we're really looking to share with you this evening is this overall update, and also ask for your support with our continuing to monitor this very closely, and to perhaps modify the number of students at a particular grade level based on the open seats that we see that we have within our staffing allocation.
Sounds good to me.
I think it looks wonderful.
I know
Good
that's a lot
job.
of information, but
That's
we
a lot
really
of
wanted to
work.
try to lay
That's
that
good.
out for you and share where we were.
Good job.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
One other possible benefit is this from adding more kindergartners. I know one year there were 15 extra at Coolidge, and they had to bus over to Cass because they didn't have an. So this would not make more students have to be overflow students, but it would actually keep them in their home school. Correct? Or that would be the goal of this. It would be to, if a school has not enough for 30 kids in a class, but too many but not enough to add, then this could possibly add a teacher if you only need 10 more spots or something like that.
It would really be, what I don't want to be is misleading on the overflow question, because overflow is a challenging situation, and we know we'd prefer to have no students on overflow from their kindergarten. But because we've committed to a hard cap, not an average of 26, we hard cap at 26.
Yes.
That we do have at kindergarten students who overflow for that school year to another local elementary school. It would really be very dependent on each unique situation. So if we were within 4 or 5 students, then that may be the case. Although in all likelihood, we wouldn't add 15 students at a grade level at one school.
School of choice.
School of choice to fill that. And so, again, if we were within, a half a dozen or within a few, and that may make the difference, then we may look at that. And also, we have to look geographically at where that school is, because, again, we have an idea now, trend-wise over the years, where it becomes to be a bit too far for folks to travel, depending on where their home district is located. So that may impact that. It won't be as common as it would, for instance, to either, with the model we showed you at the 5th and 6th grade, to even out and be able to stabilize and lower some class sizes, or perhaps limited accommodation. Those would be much more likely than being able to eliminate overflow.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just have to be a pretty unique situation.
But this won't, if there was an overflow situation, it would have been with our own LPS students.
Correct.
Anyway, it will not impact having to overflow because
Absolutely.
we added students.
Right, absolutely, yes. And we would still continue to, as we assign students, one of the things that I know the community has asked about and the board has asked about is, would we ever place students where we have denied our own students an intra-district school of choice transfer? And so we carefully monitor if there is a grade level at a particular school that is closed because we do not have room for our own students to transfer within the district. We would not add out-of-district school of choice students to that grade level. We may add them to that school, but we would not add them to the grade level where we denied our own internal transfers. Does that make
Gotcha,
sense?
yes.
Absolutely.
With the exception of potentially putting a sibling.
Yeah, yes.
If there was already a sibling at that school, and that grade level, we just normally would not add more students to, but,
That would be the one unique
Yeah.
exception to keep a family together.
Questions? Okay. Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
That was informative.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were good
Well, I
students.
peeked.
I know you did.
He was watching you.
Okay, that concludes finance.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. That will take us to item 5, Policy Committee. Mrs. Burton.
I do not have anything for tonight.
Very good. And that'll take us to item 6, Legislative Committee. Mrs. Bradford.
I do not have anything tonight.
That'll take us to item 7, Personnel Committee. Mrs. Frank.
I do not have anything tonight.
And I noted that we do not have curriculum identified on the agenda.
We do not, and we do not have any.
We do not have anything. I didn't want you to be left out.
You know, I was thinking of bringing something just.
Just because.
Just because she can or wants.
All right, then we have come to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else to add, Mrs. O'Quist?
There is not. Thank you, President Johnson.
All righty, then we are concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, President Johnson.